money that's been poured into this race from national Democratic groups. Now, Lena Howland actually is over at the Josh Harder event right now, so I think we're going to go and catch up with Lena there. Lena, how's the Harder campaign feeling right now?
Well, hey, Liz, we are here inside of what will be Josh Harder's watch party here tonight. As you can see behind me, it is a little empty right now. That's because this party doesn't actually kick off until 8:15. That's a full 15 minutes after those polls have closed here in California. His campaign is here inside right now, setting up and just getting things ready for what they are hoping to be a very big night for Democrats here in the Valley. We haven't seen Josh Harder just yet. He will be here in a little while. Volunteers are also on edge, hoping for a big win again for those Democrats here in the Valley. So people will start showing up here in the next 15 minutes. We're going to be out here talking to those folks and those Democratic supporters of Josh Harder on how they're feeling and what they are thinking might happen with this very tight race. We're going to stay on that and bring you what they're saying, how they're feeling through this show and on our Facebook and Twitter. So for now, we're going to toss it back to you guys.
All right, thanks, Lena. Yeah, I mean, this challenge is really for both of those candidates right now, Josh Harder and Jeff Denham. We talked about those national forces that might be hurting Jeff Denham, but Josh Harder is a pretty relatively unknown guy in this district as well. He's never held office in this area, even though he grew up in Turlock. So we'll be following a lot more about all that. I know we'll be checking with all of you throughout the night, but I'll turn it back to you guys now in the studio, Chris.
All right, and we will have news coming in throughout the night. We'll be in place. As a matter of fact, we got some pretty big news that is just coming in now. ABC News is projecting both Newsom and Feinstein have won their respective roles for governor and for senator here in California. That is ABC News with that projection. And so, as you can imagine, we are going to be getting results coming in every minute. And so as soon as we do, we'll try to bring those to you. ABC News projecting, of course, the elections throughout the night. With us tonight, of course, you can text us and you can interact with us. And so look at this number, 916-321-3310. The League of Women Voters is here to answer your questions. And again, the number that you can text if you want us to text you right back, real people texting you right back, 916-321-3310. Let us know what you want to know. Meanwhile, let's check back in with Brandon now. He is with our political experts, if you will, the DeLuce brothers. They have feelings on both sides of the aisle here, conservative and liberal. Brandon.
Oh, boy, let me tell you, they are having a fun time tonight watching these results come in.
Oh, my God. No, he's laughing because literally we're talking, it was 8:07, and the news media is already announcing that, guess what? Democrats won in California. It's, oh my God. It's like water is wet.
Like we didn't know that might be what's about to happen.
The bubbles from the soda hadn't even stopped fizzing, and oh, it's over.
Yeah, well, that's sort of the deal here in California. If you take a look at our top line races, the governor's race, not a lot of people on pins and needles waiting for that one. No. It does, however, look like we're avoiding this outcome where California is the potential hanging chad of this year's election. We've already got the House and Senate races sort of, or at least the balance of power, called at this point. So exactly. Now it's just a matter of whose butts are going to be in those seats in Congress.
Pretty much, yeah. That's pretty much what we're going to be looking at in California.
Yeah, that's where we're at. And tonight, while I think some of the individual races have been kind of surprises, the overall tenor of the election, I think, is going about how everyone expected. Mm-hmm. I think the Democrats were getting really optimistic leading into election night, but I think the results have been really obvious the game plan is more for 2020 than it is for 2018.
Well, I think the one thing that I think nobody anticipated was Republicans gaining so many seats in the Senate. And I really happen to believe that that's the Brett Kavanaugh effect. I believe that people were really turned off with how Senate Democrats treated Brett Kavanaugh, and I think that played a role there. But evidently that didn't factor into the House races.
Right. Yeah. So I got to ask. I mean, as you look ahead at what these next 2 years are going to look like, we talked about this a little bit at the top of the show. A federal government tied in knots, basically, at this point. it's going to take anything that's going to get through Congress is going to have to be bipartisan. But I got to imagine if you're taking a look just purely from the stance of the White House, having the control of the Senate rest in Republicans' hands has got to be a huge win because you at least have your confirmation machine in place.
That helps Republicans significantly because Trump will still be able to appoint as many of his federal judges that he wants. Most of his other appointments that he wants to make, because there's going to be folks that are going to be leaving the administration. Most of his other Senate confirmable appointments are probably going to sail right through. So he's doing well there. But I think you're going to see a lot more budget fights because the budget originates in the House.
Yeah.
You're going to see a lot more fights there. And you're going to have the Democrats potentially, as Craig was talking to me earlier, prosecuting investigations against the administration.
I think the question is going to be...
And so you're in that sense, you're going to see, I think, a real tamping down of Trump's ability to really fly higher than
I think he's trying to filibuster. So one of the things you're going to see
is the Senate's job.
Which is the Senate's job. But I think one of the challenges you're going to see in the House is this, is that the real tenor and a lot of the action, a lot of the emotion has been about wanting to investigate President Trump. The problem is that in most of the key seats that they won, these were people who were more like, we want to legislate. So the question is, once they actually get sworn in, are they going to lean towards investigations, or are they going to lean towards legislation? That's really going to be the key as to whether or not Democrats hold on to those very same seats in 2020.
Well, and you raise a really interesting point with that, the investigation side of what the House can do. If Democrats have control of the House, I mean, it's not that long ago, you have to look back, the Benghazi committee. I mean, the Democrats can have the Kavanaugh committee. They can have the Where is his tax returns committee. All of that stuff. If they want to chest thump, but I don't think anyone is over the across the Rubicon into impeachment as like being on the table.
No, they haven't. But an impeached president is of no value to the Democrats, because then you've got Mike Pence, who's essentially squeaky clean, who comes in and potentially runs in 2020. And hey, I'm the new guy. Give me another 4 years.
And can run as the grown-up in the room.
Right. And so that actually pulling the trigger on impeaching the president isn't, I think, in the Democrats' playbook. I think what they really want to be able to do is to string it out, and if they wanted to go negative, right? If they wanted to go dark, they could string it out and hamstring the president and make it difficult for him. But we're also not talking about the other thing. There could be some real battle fatigue here. And so there may be a desire, if both sides are looking at 2020, there may be some potential room for détente with the new leadership, new opportunity. There may be some avenues and opportunities for détente and try to actually get some things done if you can find a way for both sides to claim some victories over the next 2 years.
I think David makes a really good point, because he is a deal maker. He wrote the book, The Art of the Deal. So he is someone who has shown that ideology is not necessarily, he is willing to fudge if it means getting a deal done.
Right.
One area where I think that both sides would agree is infrastructure. The idea of doing now, how you pay for it, they may disagree on.
I feel like I heard about this a couple of years ago, though.
Well,
the whole, like, we're going to get a big kumbaya infrastructure deal going, and that hasn't
10 years ago. 10 years
ago.
Well,
that was because you had a President Obama, who had an infrastructure deal that had no infrastructure.
No, I'm talking about when President Trump came up. Anyway, we'll have time to parse a few specific issues as we go into the night. The DeLuz brothers will be here with us throughout the evening. Hey, Chris, we'll send it back over to you for a second.
That's right. Thanks, guys. Of course, we are just getting started. Want to see if we can take a look at the graphic now, because we're talking about control of Congress, who's in control, who has what. I want to see if we can show folks exactly what that looks like. You look at that now and you think, well, that looks like a lot of red, right? But according to ABC News, we are now projecting that the Democrats will indeed take back the House, but that the Republicans will hold the Senate. And that sets us up for our next conversation tonight, this reality that we are indeed a divided nation. And so let's see if we can go out to Madison now, who is with our what we're calling Real Folks Roundtable, if you will, to see how people are reacting to some of the early results that we're getting in. Madison.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Chris, as we've been sitting here just kind of chatting, everyone's chiming in as we're seeing the results come up on the screen here. We have obviously a lot of different people from different backgrounds here tonight. We have Kaleo, we have Emma, we have Ray, we have Inez. Inez is a mom from Stockton. We have Ray, who's from West Sacramento, watching closely the West Sacramento mayor race as well as Prop 6, you were just saying. And then you're a young voter, 18.
Yes.
So obviously this is a big day, a big night for you. And then Kaleo is 17 years old, not able yet to vote, but obviously still talking about a lot of important races and getting a lot of your, fellow, I guess, teen friends engaged to vote. So I guess we'll just start with everybody if you want to chime in about what we're watching and what matters, what props, what races matter to you all, and just take it away.
I'll start off. I think one thing that I was asked is what's prompting me to vote, and I think the first thing that comes to mind is what propositions and what politicians are going to make it cheaper for me to live here in California, something that's going to affect me every day. And that includes taxes, whether it's Prop 6. This includes whoever my politicians are when it comes to the future of single-payer healthcare here in California, which is more long-term. That's my main concern. Who's going to make it cheaper for me to live here?
Gotcha. Yeah, and you were talking about Prop 6. Obviously, that one involves the gas tax, repealing that. We're seeing some numbers, I guess, well, we just saw them right now. If we can go back, maybe that would help me a little bit, but it's obviously very close in terms of that proposition. For you, that's got to be important to know what's going to happen soon with that.
I was having this conversation with someone earlier. Jerry Brown touts that we're like the 6th largest economy in the world, and we have all this development coming in, so that means we must have more tax revenue coming in. But yet these politicians are passing the buck down to us when it comes to paying our gas, paying taxes on gas. What about people who live in suburban areas who are single family, they can't take the bus or ride the bike. These are people who strategize their budget yearly. If we're having a prosperous economy, you shouldn't be passing the buck down to us. If that tells me that you're misappropriating funds at the top.
Gotcha. And Inez, I know we talked earlier about what's motivating you to vote this election. For you today, what's been the big talker in your household?
Well, I've spent most of the day with my 3-year-old, so there wasn't a lot of talk about anything. But I did talk to him about what I was doing, because I'm one of those, I just follow it and I wait and so I was kind of waited until today to complete my ballot and then went in and turned it in. But he's my biggest motivation. And when, just like how he had just said, I want to know I want to vote for those that are going to make it cheaper for me to live here in California. And I think the number one thing I think about with voter motivation is my son. And I want to vote in a way I think about his future and what is his future going to look like. How are the people that we are electing now, how are the decisions that they are making going to affect him in the long run? So, like I said, I spent my whole day with a 3-year-old, but we did talk because I think it's important. I love that you guys are here and you're so young, and that's so awesome that you're here and you're passionate about this. And so that's my passion, is my son and voting for him.
Absolutely, and I think a big story tonight is the voter turnout. We were showing images from Sac State earlier. I know you both are still in high school, but that will be in your future next. And just seeing both of you are very involved in getting others to get out and vote. So what's that conversation been like for the midterms?
I think I'm really interested to see what voter turnout will be, particularly for the youth vote, because historically, youth people don't really, people my age don't vote, historically. So I think it'll be really interesting, given recent social events, things like gun control, recent events that are really inflaming youth voters, to see what the voter turnout will be there, as well as the new system in 5 counties in Sacramento County. I'm a poll worker, you a student poll worker. Yep. And I'm really interested to see if the experimental new system will actually increase voter turnout.
Yeah, absolutely. If we can go right back out to the live photos from Sac State, it just goes to show how many students are still in line at this hour. Obviously, polls closed at 8:19, but if you were in line by 8 o'clock, it looks like many of them are already filling out what would be maybe registration cards or would be their ballot just to get ahead. And those are students at Sac State. This is the first university in California to do this by opening a voting center. It's been open since Saturday, but I was a college student once in the day. I would definitely contest and say that some of us could be a little bit of procrastinators, so maybe that is why there is such a long line. But again, what you were talking about, it's awesome to see that there's that many people coming out to vote today.
Yeah.
I think with the youth vote especially, you see these huge droves of young voters who are voting for the first time in the elections. And I think it's very indicative of this new kind of modern era that we're entering where people aren't limited by getting the news or just going to a library and looking up issues. Everyone has information at the tip of their fingers. They can look up why is the United States the only nation that doesn't provide healthcare to all of its citizens. Youth voters are very educated in that sense. They can go beyond what their politicians tell them and say, wait, what about this? What about this issue? What about this issue? And just go streamline directly to the facts. They don't have to go through all of the politics of it. So I think that's going to be a huge change in the next upcoming elections, this huge rise of youth voters.
Absolutely. Well, I want to just thank all of you for joining us. We're obviously going to be checking back within the show with all of you in terms of when we get results back in and whatnot. No doubt a passionate day and night when it comes to the midterm elections. So many people going out and turning out to vote. It's just been awesome to see, and I do appreciate you all being here. So for now, we're going to turn it back to Chris Thomas, standing by live in the newsroom. Obviously, Chris, these people are great, very passionate people too, so we'll be checking back in with them shortly.
Sounds good. Madison Meyer, we thank you. The question for you is, you know, we're talking about the results as they're coming in. Did you go out and vote today? And if you did, why did you go out and vote? For Armady Gomez, she has been on the road. She went all over the place just to try to get a flavor or a sense for why people went out to vote. Watch.
We're at the Maidu Community Center, and we're going to go talk to some folks and see what they have to say about this election and what motivated them to vote.
I am for repealing the gas tax.
Okay, why is that?
I think the state just is stealing our money from the previous gas taxes, and they need to just spend that wisely instead of on other things.
There's a lot of controversy with this president, good and bad, and I think people want to vote either to get people who don't think like him in, to kind of help not let him do some of the things that he's doing, and you have other people that want to vote to make sure that the Republicans get in so that they will support him.
Well, welcome in. It is election night, and we are here with you all night at ABC 10. We're following results live on air and at abc10.com. Any questions or comments about tonight, you can now text us 916-321-3310. We're keeping up with your questions, and the League of Women Voters is here answering some of those questions. Right now, let's get caught up on some of those results, Let's look at some of the graphics. The California governor's race, Newsom versus Cox. We're seeing that is being called here in Arizona. There you see on your screen, Martha McSally, the Republican, is there ahead in some of those races there. We also know that here in California that the race for Senate with Feinstein versus De Leon has been called, and that Feinstein is indeed being called as the leader here in California. For governor, that has been called as well for Governor Newsom, Governor-elect Newsom, we should say. And so there are so many results that are coming in. You'll see them scrolling there on your screen throughout the night. This is a big night, and we have live teams all across the area in place to give us a look, of course, at this race right there on your screen, the Jeff Denham versus Harder race. And there is Liz Kreutz live there at the Denham camp to give us a flavor for what you're feeling there and how folks are feeling there in the Denham camp, Liz.
Yeah, I certainly think, Chris, that the Denham campaign is really nervous right now, of course. I mean, they know they're in a tough race. We talked to a lot of people, over the past few months that say they think it's going to be a razor-thin election race. I got to say, though, as you see those returns coming in, I was talking to Paul Mitchell with Political Data Inc. yesterday about this. He was sort of saying that it's pretty typical at 8 p.m. when the polls close to maybe see Republican turnout a little bit higher, because those early votes do tend to be older, whiter, more conservative voters that do come to the polls typically in those early vote. So a lot of times the people who are voting later, maybe showing up to the polls at the last minute, are sometimes more of the Democratic vote. So we might see that Democratic vote inch up throughout the night. But of course, we'll see. I know the campaign is waiting to have expecting to be here pretty late into the night. They're saying they could even go till 2 in the morning here if we even get any results. Just for a little color from this event, though, you can see behind me people are starting to get some drinks. There's some beer on tap, and we looked at the menu. They'll be eating tri-tip and mashed potatoes. They have wine, beer, champagne. Just before they ate, they were singing God Bless America. They all stood for the Pledge of Allegiance. But there's a lot of issues at play here, and one of those in particular is water. In this district, it's a heavily agricultural area, and water is something that a lot of these voters are going to be the one issue that they're going to be voting on. And I know Lena Howland over at the Josh Harder campaign, that's something you've been following. I know you were at that water grab rally just a few months ago. Lena, how is that playing into this election?
Well, Liz, we have been talking about this for several weeks now, and water is one of the very big issues that is playing a role in this specific race. Now, I was at that Stop the Water Grab rally just a few months ago, and I was there with Jeff Denham, and we saw Jeff Denham speak to many of the farmers, and I talked to many of the farmers who said they did support Jeff Denham in what he is trying to do here. They said they do support him, and that is one of the bigger things that Josh Harder is up against right now. And as we know, there was that last-minute initiative that we reported on just a couple of weeks ago with that water memo that the president and Jeff Denham worked on together. That was his presidential that was his presidential memo that he put together, worked together with Denham. And I spoke with Josh Harder about this, and he said that this is just kind of one last-minute desperate attempt that Denham was doing to try to get some votes here in the Valley. So that's just what people are saying. That's what people are talking about. Again, water is one of the bigger issues that has weighed on this. Both candidates have said that they will work hard on the water issues here in the Valley. There's no contesting that. It's just kind of one of the issues that people are talking about. That's what people are thinking about. We do know there was that memo signed off on just 2 weeks ago by President Trump, and Jeff Denham was by his side. So for now, we are inside of Josh Harder's watch party right now. They have just opened the doors. We're going to pan over there. You can see a very, very large crowd of people that are just starting to make their way into this watch party tonight. They have only opened the doors a few minutes ago, so we are still working on talking to some of the people out here. We will be hearing from them just a little bit later on in the show, but for now we're going to stay out here and continue to talk to these people again about those important issues like water that are playing a role in how some of these people are voting. So for now, we're going to go ahead and toss it back to you guys.
Hey, Lena, yeah, I think that if we do see Denham eke out a win in this election, we will definitely attribute that last-minute push he got from President Trump when it comes to those water issues as one of those reasons that he may have been able to win over those extra votes. But I did ask Josh Harder a few weeks ago when I spoke to him, I said, is there anything you have in common with your opponent? And he said, you know what, I like what he says when he's here in this district. I think we align in many ways. It's when he goes to D.C. and votes against what he says, is what Harder said, that he doesn't like about his opponent. Anyways, a lot to unpack here, a lot more issues to get to that were at play. It's a pretty complex race here, but I know we got to get back to you guys in the studio, Chris.
That's right. We will come back to you all throughout the night to give us a look at how things are going there with the campaigns. Let's talk about the national races, where things stand as we speak. If we have the map, we can kind of give you an idea of how the map is looking. What we know so far is that the Senate will remain in control of the Republicans and that the Democrats are projected to take the House. Looks like a lot of red there on the map, but the bottom line is the projections are coming in, and those official projections are saying that the Senate will stay in the hands of the Republicans and that the Democrats will take back control in the House. We, of course, are a divided nation. This is one of the times where the polls have actually gotten things right. You know, some were saying after the last election that can you really believe the polls when it comes to national races? And in many ways, when we talk about division, we have to talk about the fact that even in some families, we've seen one family member feeling one way, the other family member feeling another way. That is on full display right here in our area with these national races. And also, we've got the Deleuze brothers who are in tonight because they are here to kind of look at how people are reacting to these national races, what people are saying, what we should think as we move forward. So let's go over to our Brandon Bitterman now with the Deleuze brothers, who one is a conservative, one has liberal views.
Yeah, David's the Democrat, Craig is the Republican, and we've been over here kind of going back and forth. Actually, it's funny you say that because we were just having a conversation about are we a divided nation, or is it just divided government, or are we in for a little bit of both for these next couple of years?
Well, I'd never like to hear us talk about we're a divided nation. Look, we're in divided government. When you have one party in control of at least one branch of government and you have another party in control of another branch of government, it's called divided government. We are not a divided nation.
Except when you have
leaders
within a party.
Except when you have Donald Trump as president, who's crazy.
When you have leaders in a particular party who's saying he's not my president. He won the election fair and square. Mind you,
Obama.
I didn't vote for Donald Trump, but guess what? He won the election. He is president, and you don't have to respect the man without respecting the office. If you want to say
the man has to respect the office, and this man does not respect the office.
If you want to say that, if you don't want to say that we are a divided nation, then you shouldn't act like it. Your party shouldn't act like it.
Well, I don't think my party is acting like it's a divided nation because we're not the ones going around.
I'm sorry, wasn't it Maxine Waters who was telling people to go to conservatives and go to their restaurants and shout at them and yell at them?
We're not the one going and speaking at meetings with neo-Nazi fascists and avowed racists and taking money from them.
Who exactly would that be?
Steve King.
Oh, wow. No, I don't know who Steve King
is. He's called a Republican from Iowa.
Right.
You guys must have a fun Thanksgiving
a party leader,
Well, we do have an interesting Thanksgiving.
Yes, we do.
Some people get dragged into this. Let me bring it closer to home and talk about this Denham-Harder race just a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put you both on the spot, and I want a prediction right now because that one has been polling razor thin.
Harder's going to take it
by
less than 2 points.
You buy that?
I'm going to say it's going to be Denham, and it's going to be by more than 3 points.
Ooh, bullish.
Yes, I'm feeling bullish.
All right, we'll save that tape because that'll be fun later.
Yes,
maybe tomorrow we can all powwow.
Well, the way California elections are, it may be a week or so.
Could be longer. Right. That's a fair point. We haven't certified. We have time for these provisional ballots, all those fun things.
Exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about the significance of that race. Even though we've got, the sort of the House being called for Democrats nationally, Senate being called for Republicans nationally, what does it matter to the people of District 10 which way this is going to go?
Well, I think the difference is that you have Josh Harder, who is running as once again, one of those moderate, I want to legislate type of Democrats.
Right.
But in the end, once he gets to Congress, he's going to become one of those I'm ready to investigate type Democrats. And I think a lot of pressure because a lot of resources came from all over the country with that as an expectation. And I think that is what you're going to see if Josh Harder were to become the congressman from that area.
And if we take a look at the early results, this is with less than a third of precincts reporting. It's looking like a 2-point race right now with Denham in the lead.
So I'm still losing and you're losing.
But this goes back to that turnout question of who turns out when and what those early results show us. So I mean, it is.
But remember what they
quite
said,
seriously too soon to call.
You're going to have your more conservative voters, your older voters who vote early are going to show up.
The people who always show up.
The people who always show up. You're going to have a lot of
and then you have your Democratic voters who vote often. They'll show up a little bit later.
He means
Chicago-style Democrats.
By the way, if you want to see behind the scenes at the election office, we have a fun one up on YouTube. We can show you how they check for that. People who try to vote twice. Don't pull that off because you'll get a nastygram. It won't be fun. Promise you that. Let's talk a little bit about the propositions. I've been telling everybody around here Prop 6 is probably the marquee one to watch and the one we know the least about because the polls are all over the map on Prop 6. This is the one that will repeal the increase in the gas tax that was passed last year. The folks who support keeping that gas tax obviously want to see Prop 6 go down in flames because they're arguing, oh, we need this $5 billion a year. Republicans were hoping that this would be a big turnout machine. I don't know if that's going to play out, but let's talk about the prop itself.
First of all, you wouldn't know what the initiative says based on what Attorney General Javier Becerra wrote in the ballot initiative because it says absolutely nothing about overturning a tax increase. So part of the issue in this whole campaign and the confusion has been the proponents are saying we want to reverse a tax increase.
Right. The information's in the voter guide, but the headline says, "Oh, do you want to get rid of funding for transportation?"
Well, exactly. Well, but even that information is not. If you look at the title and summary, the tax increase, cutting the tax increase is really not there.
It's pretty buried. Yeah,
it's buried, which is what the Democratic attorney generals tend to do.
But the proponents have done a very good job of
lying.
Creating a visualization of what's really at stake if you don't have the gas tax.
But even the Sacramento Bee said that their statement was inaccurate.
Let me finish.
Okay, go ahead.
At the end of the day, what you're going to have is the proponents have been able to say, at the end of the day, if you get rid of the gas tax, all these roads and bridges and all the potholes and all the other challenges that you have on the roads and in your commute, those are not going to be built. All of the projects that are in the queue right now are not going to be built if we don't have the gas tax. They want to say that we can get it by cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. There's not that much waste, fraud, and abuse in the state government.
Okay, I worked in the state legislature. I know there's more. One of the points that I wanted to make, though, was we're not getting rid of.
All right, we got to move on from here. We're going to come back and talk more about the gas tax the next time we have.
There you go.
All right, hey, Chris, we'll send it back to you.
Okay, you're right. That has to be some Thanksgiving, huh? All right, we got a live picture we want to take you out to now because Nancy Pelosi is speaking. We now know that the Democrats are projected to take the House. Let's listen in.
We owned the ground. Thanks to you. Thanks to you, tomorrow will be a new day in America. Remember this feeling, know the power to win. And almost all congratulations to those dynamic, diverse, incredible candidates who have taken back the House for the American people. Let us salute all of our candidates. All of our candidates. Today is more than about Democrats and Republicans. It's about restoring the Constitution's checks and balances to the Trump administration. It's about stopping the GOP and Mitch McConnell's assaults on Medicare, Medicaid, the Affordable Care Act, and the health care of 130 million Americans living with pre-existing medical conditions. Let's hear it more for pre-existing medical conditions. It's about ending wealthy special interest free reign over Washington, but more than anything, it's about what a new Democratic majority will mean in the lives of hardworking Americans. That's what it's about. Democrats pledge a Congress that works for the people. For the people. Lower the cost of health care by lowering the cost of prescription drugs. Raise workers' wages with strong economic growth by rebuilding the infrastructure of America. Clean up corruption to make Washington work for all Americans. We will take real, very, very strong legislative action to legislate to negotiate down the price control of prescription drugs that is burdening seniors and families across America. We will deliver a transformational investment in America's infrastructure to create more good-paying jobs, rebuilding our roads, bridges, schools, water systems, broadband networks, and schools and housing, and beyond. We will drain the swamp of dark interest money in our elections, because when we do, Americans have greater confidence in everything their Congress works on, from health care to taxes to guns to clean air and clean water for our children, when they know.
Nancy Pelosi speaking as we speak there. You see her. She will presumably be the new Speaker of the House, as the predictions are that the Democrats will now take back control of the House. Of course, it's not a done deal. They'll have to have votes on leadership and all. But we would presume that you have just heard from what we will presume will be the new Speaker of the House. And so let's see if we cannot get some of your reaction online to some of these developments, if we will. Let's go over now to Madison. She's standing by with some of the social media reaction. What are you hearing, Madison?
Well, hello, Chris. I'm here with Elena, our social guru of the night, just going through your Facebook Live comments. We really do appreciate you all engaging with us and asking your questions and sharing what you have to say about tonight's election night. Mostly a lot of people just chiming in saying that they're watching this live with us. They're waiting for more results to come in, really.
Yeah, and one of the great things that we've seen is Sam right here saying, you know, thanks for this live post. He really wants to get these election results in really fast. But, you know, just a lot of criticism, a lot of applause. It's very much vocal on both sides of the aisle.
I think tonight what you want to say maybe is that everyone is so passionate about this election. So many people are heading to the polls, so much conversation. It has been all over the place, as expected. But maybe rivals a presidential election turnout, or at least the conversation of it is what we're seeing. But keep asking your questions, keep commenting, keep socializing with us. But another thing we want to talk about really quick, because we don't want to take up too much of your time with all of our results, but this lovely pizza here. We obviously did not have this delivered to us by this, but we want to talk about Pizza to the Polls. It's something that is a social media platform campaign, if you will.
Yeah.
You know much more.
Yeah. So basically, Pizza for the Polls is a way to keep people in line, because nobody likes to stand in line, but especially nobody likes to stand in line when they're hungry.
Yeah.
So essentially, this whole idea started a couple years ago. It's a nonprofit where people can donate money, and that money is then used to send pizza to poll places where there's long, long lines. Now, we've seen, if you scroll down here, you can see what upcoming deliveries are coming. So far, they've had 636 just recent deliveries. In these upcoming deliveries, we've seen Fresno, we've seen Sacramento, and most recently, we've seen Turlock. Now, a lot of people might be wondering, okay, I donate money, the polls close, what happens to the money afterwards? Right. All that money is saved to feed voters next year, to feed other hungry Americans, and to feed marchers in protests.
Yeah, well, we've seen this hashtag too, hashtag stay in line, kind of trending on Twitter tonight, especially locally in our area. As we know, Sac State had a long line out the door. There were pizzas delivered there. So, you know, there's a big push to keep people in line. You know, if you see the long line, that doesn't deter you from leaving and going home.
Absolutely.
If you stay in line, your vote still counts. It still matters as well. All right. Well, Elena, thank you so much. We'll check back in with you at some point throughout the show. We'll send things back over to Chris now.
And you all were just talking about those lines at Sac State. Let's see if we can't show you some of that video from Sac State earlier today, where people were in line waiting to cast their votes. We're told that some people were there waiting for 2 hours, even as the sun went down. And so that's why they decided, if we have the video, we'll show it to you. That's why they decided to bring the pizza in for folks there at Sac State.
Made him a good candidate. Yeah.
There we go. So we got a vote center sign, and there is the line long into the night there at Sac State, and why they were bringing in pizzas for folks. But people were happy to stand in line, Brandon, because they know that this is a pretty big night. I was saying earlier that it feels more like a presidential election than it does the midterm elections. Most people it'll be interesting to see once the actual numbers come out about the participation in this year, but it is certainly something to watch. So
look, if there's one thing that President Donald Trump is good at, it's about making everything about Donald Trump. And here we have this sort of midterm election where he's not on the ballot, but he's very much on the ballot.
And
I
it's
think
certainly
that's
got a lot of attention.
What you're seeing out there.
On
On both sides.
So let's talk about these propositions, because I know that right here in California, that was the thing. What, it was like 11 propositions that we had?
Would have had 12, but you don't get to break up with Southern California folks up here in NorCal. Sorry, that's not happening.
And we had so many people sending us messages, I know on my Facebook page, saying, I just kind of feel overwhelmed with all of these propositions. I want to vote, but I also want to make sure that I know what I'm talking about when I vote. And I know that you put together what I thought was really good. It was a YouTube playlist, and it just put it in simple terms for people to be able to understand these propositions. One of the big ones, of course, is the gas tax. Should the gas tax be repealed? How are those propositions faring so far?
Yeah, so we have some early results coming in on these, and mind you, it is very early at this point. The first 4 props were all bonds. So this was basically like taking out a big home loan for the state so that they could pay to do some stuff. This one in particular, Prop 1, is an affordable housing question. The idea is to borrow some money to build some affordable housing, give it away as grants. You can see right now that one is going down. If we can move on to Prop 2, this one is different than the other bond questions in that it has a dedicated pot of money to pay it back. This one would come out of the millionaire's tax. And you can see it is passing pretty handily as of right now. That one's got a solid lead going. If we move on to Prop 3, that will get us the water project bond. This is the biggest of the bond package. And even though people are really concerned about water, you can see this one's struggling right off the out of the gate. And then Prop 4 rounds out our bonds. If we can go ahead and move on to that. And this one is to fix up children's hospitals across the state.
And you can see, kids, huh?
You can see this one's passing. It's interesting, though, because hospitals tend to have their own funding mechanisms. And here we are with state money now being given to hospitals if this result stands. Again, we are looking at something like 5% of precincts in right now, so this is very early. We can keep moving down the line with Prop 6. This, I would argue, is the biggest one.
Yes,
Republicans wanted this on the ballot to hopefully drive their base to turn out. And you can see right now, this is going down 54 to 46.
Now, help people understand, because a lot of people were saying, what is the question? The question is, do you want to repeal the gas tax?
There's a lot to unpack in here. It's not just that. So the legislature actually passed an increase on your gas tax and your car registration fees and also electric cars, because electric cars don't pay for any gas tax, so they have to pitch into roads too, right? So that's one piece of it, is repealing all of that. So you're talking about, you know, getting an immediate discount on a gallon of gas.
So people are saying no.
But people are saying no. Now, it's not worded that obviously about that, as we were just talking about with the Deleuze brothers earlier. It's not worded that obviously on your ballot that that's what it is. But it also would have put handcuffs on the state legislature, saying they had to ask the voters if they ever wanted to raise gas tax or car registration fees again. The state of Colorado, where I moved here from, has that for all taxes, but that's kind of that's a Republican policy goal to get that on in front of some states. But as you can see right now, that is being rejected. But the polling's been all over the map on this one, because it really depends how deep into this voters look.
I just want to say one more thing about this, because there was money at stake, right? Monies that were already kind of rolling out to kind of improve California roads, right?
That gas tax hike, you're already paying it right now. So that money has been dedicated towards road projects, including some right here in Sacramento, where we had that big chunk of freeway come out in downtown Sacramento on I-5. That is one where they are planning to use some of this money towards that goal. My favorite's coming up next, Prop 7. There was no polling on this, so I'm really, really excited to see any result. And you can see right now, this is daylight saving time. This is the idea of getting rid of that twice-a-year time change. And the people in favor of this, what they want to do is put us basically on Arizona time. So we'd always be on basically Mountain Standard Time, if you will, or Pacific Daylight Time. So think what we just left, the time change we just did, go back to summer, and then have that be the sunset all year. People are casting a pretty strong vote for that. Big caveat, Congress has to sign off on it. Congress is going to both be tied in knots, and not a huge fan of California, so don't go holding your breath that was the last time I'm changing my clock.
So really bring that point home, though. So even if this, I mean, it's doing pretty well now, 61% of people
saying. But doing well.
Even if that does go that way, it's not, we can't make that decision. It has to go to the national level.
No, and the legislature has to pass it too. So, but I mean, the legislature is going to look, if this passes by 60%, the state legislature, bet your bottom dollar, is going to go with the voters on this. That's a pretty loud, resounding, yeah, we want this from California voters. And yet if that stands, 60-40, and yet Congress is going to look at the map and go, California, why are you so special? Yeah, we gave Arizona that deal a while ago. I don't know about you.
You know what they say about Act of Congress, too, huh?
There you go. Prop 8's the one that's been filling your TV with nasty ads about dialysis, and half of you are going, what the heck's dialysis? That is for renal disease. It's basically, it's a machine that you have to go in and get your blood cleaned.
I know what dialysis is. Come on.
The rest of you are going, what the heck would this do? And a lot of times when people are confused, they go with status quo, and you can see right now the no is near 2/3 on this. This would have put a cap on the profit that the dialysis companies can make, and the lion's share of dialysis clinics in California are owned by for-profit companies. This is basically taking sort of that Obamacare approach that they took with the health insurance companies and saying, like, at a certain point, you're only allowed to take so much as overhead and profit. You need to give it back to the people. You know, there were
and folks are saying they don't want to do that. It looks like right now.
Right, they were going to try and do that to the dialysis clinics and have them refund your insurance if they made more than 15%. Anyway, people are not wanting to go down that road. Prop 9's not on the ballot, so I can't show it to you.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, this my screen is covered up here.
Yeah,
so
we'll go back to the boxes.
On,
this is Prop 10 now.
Are we on 10?
Yes, this is 10.
Okay. Fantastic. This is this is rent control, and you can see it's going down pretty handily.
Wow.
Now the polls showed this going down. And it wouldn't have enacted some big statewide program of rent control. That's not what the question was. It was to allow local governments to enact more kinds of rent control. So traditionally, rent control has been about, you know, I'm renewing the lease on some tenant. I'm going to try and jack their rates up a couple $100s, you know, and it's a way to keep landlords from doing that. This would have expanded that to new tenants in addition, so not just renewals. It would also expanded it away from just apartment complexes and apply it to single-family homes. And there were real concerns about what that might do to the rental market.
Because I know they were saying that it might discourage builders from actually building more units is what you wanted, because if they felt like they couldn't make as much of a profit from
if the math doesn't work for their investors, then they might not do it. So there were lots of concerns around this, and you can see that at least the early results show those concerns being borne out. We can move on to Prop 11. This one is about emergency workers on private ambulance crews. And interestingly, there wasn't a no campaign. Nobody turned in an argument to the state against this. After they missed that deadline, somehow a couple of union folks got together and put a blog post together against it, but a little too late if you missed the, getting into every voter's mailbox in the state. So what people saw when they looked at their guide was no one turned in an argument against this, and you can see the result is sort of reflecting that.
They had some really interesting commercials, though, about lunch and being able to take lunch at certain times.
Yeah,
and that type of thing with this.
It is literally, we all had to vote on the lunch breaks that private ambulance company workers take because of state labor laws, and this is to keep them on call in those lunch breaks, which they're already doing, but there was a lawsuit against it, and so this is basically trying to negate a legal argument that's going on right now. And then lastly is the animal welfare question with Prop 12. And we can see that that one is passing 60-40. The Humane Society of the United States had a laundry list of organizations on its side, on the yes side of this. There were a couple of organizations on the no side, including PETA would be the most well-known, the more hardline vegan animal rights folks. They didn't like it because they didn't think it gave hens enough space in their cages. Well, the idea is to get rid of cages in a couple of years, put them in these big facilities, and they didn't think that they had enough space to spread out in those facilities. But you can see 60-40, at least according to the early results, that one looks to be passing. We'll continue to keep an eye on these results and try to drill home for you what you can expect to change in the coming years.
I told you know what he's talking about, y'all. So we want to know, why did you vote today? What drove you to the polls? Watch.
Lincoln, we made it to your backyard. We're at Grace Life polling place.
What's motivating people is all the racism that's been going on. And I think we are a land of immigrants, and I feel that people feel like it's somehow people have forgotten about that. As long as we feel that everybody did vote, then we know that, that the voice was heard, whichever way it goes.
I wanted to repeal the gas tax because the prices are getting really prohibitive. I like the bit about trying to improve conditions for farm animals.
it is election night in America, and we want to show you some of the results, especially those propositions, huh?
Yeah, we got 11 of them on the ballot here in California. So let's whip through some of these. Props 1 through 4 are all bond questions. Borrow a bunch of money for some spending. This one in particular, Prop 1, is on affordable housing. You can see that one in the early results appears to be passing by a couple of points. Prop 2 is the only one with a dedicated source of funds. This one's for mentally ill homeless people. It's housing projects for them.
Doing
and it
well.
comes out of the millionaire tax, and that might be what's helping to push it over the edge. Water projects in Prop 3. This is the biggest spending package.
Water's a big deal here in California.
Big deal, but it appears to be going down. People apparently not sold on the spending that it proposed. And then if we go to Prop 4, this is children's hospitals, sympathetic cause. You can see it is passing fairly handily, even though they tend to have their own funding streams as hospitals. If we can cruise on to Prop 5, that leaves the spending aside. But Prop 5, if we can take a look at...
It's coming shortly but surely, because everybody is going to want to see. Yeah.
This is a property tax break for seniors. Interestingly, going down, this would have allowed more flexibility for seniors to move around California and take their lower tax rates from being in their house a long time with them.
Get to Prop 6 now, because this is the gas tax, right?
This is the gas tax.
Yeah.
The repeal of the gas tax, and you can see it's failing right now. So Californians apparently
do not want to repeal the gas tax. They want to keep the gas tax, according to this, right?
Yeah, controversy over how that was placed on the ballot, but there it is. Prop 7, if we can move along, daylight saving time, the idea of ending the twice-a-year time change and keeping us on daylight time all year.
Daylight saving
Man,
time.
that thing's going gangbusters. We'll move along. Prop 8, we can get to it. This is the dialysis profit caps. That one's going down as well.
Thank you,
and
y'all.
we'll check in on some more of these as the night goes on.
All right, let's finish this out, huh? This is one of those things that we're looking at Proposition 10 because and Proposition 11 there, the results are still coming in, but we're starting to see as we get a better picture of what people want to see here in California.
Yeah, absolutely. Prop 11 was kind of a squirrely one, oddly specific. This had to do with private ambulance workers and their lunch breaks, the idea that they could be kept on call while they're in their lunch break in case they needed to go and respond to an emergency. That one's passing pretty handily. And then Prop 12, this is the animal welfare question. The big issue here is egg-laying hens and how much space they have to roam. It does a modest increase to the amount of space, but more importantly, according to the activists that are behind it, it gets rid of cages in the long run. It's a couple years out before the cages are completely banned. But that one appears to be doing pretty handily as well.
Okay, I think we want to go over to our roundtable, if I'm not mistaken. Let's get out to Madison because we've got some real folks who are here to react to some of the results that we're seeing. Madison, how are folks feeling about these results?
Yeah, we were just talking about that. You know, obviously as things are coming in slowly but surely, some projections, obviously we can't really call them for sure yet, but this group of people here with me, obviously a very diverse group, different ages and different interests and passions. Are there any surprises so far in the night?
I think with me, with the city of West Sac where I live, Joe DeAnda is losing by I think almost double digits. I was really surprised. I thought the incumbent, Christopher Cabaldon, had been in power for too long. Obviously, I'm a DeAnda supporter, and I thought that, or excuse me, yeah, I'm a DeAnda supporter, and many in my city felt that Cabaldon had been in power for too long. But surprisingly, he's winning by double digits. That was a surprise for me.
And that's obviously one that you were watching very closely, living out there too.
Yeah.
All right, and then as for you, anything surprising or shocking or standing out?
There was a couple that were just a little bit closer than I would have thought. With the, you know, we're in California. I think a lot of us expect a lot of things to go blue more so, but there was a few that the percentages were pretty close. And I think you were even saying with Cox and Newsom that it was closer than maybe we thought, which that was surprising to me to see, yeah, a little bit of the Republican side a little closer in some of the races than I would have thought.
Yeah, and you were talking too when we met about the Proposition 4 for children's hospitals. That race, it looks like it's going to be in the favor for the bond,
it looked like, and I can't remember what the percentage was, but that was a pretty high one. It seemed to, be well over the other one.
Yeah, absolutely. Out for you two as well. 18, 17, anything surprising tonight?
Honestly, I'm very surprised about the Florida Senate and governor race, and also the Stacey Abrams, Brian Kemp race in Georgia, I think it is, for governor. There was just so much support on the Democratic side we saw for Stacey Abrams and Andrew Gillum. I know Gillum was ahead in polls by, I think, an aggregate of 5 points. And I think for a lot of Democrats, it's a shock that he lost by about a point. Yeah.
Yeah, and Emma.
Not so much nationally, but yeah, like you were saying, the fact that Newsom and Cox, that was so close, it was interesting to see a Republican that close to a Democrat for a governor race in California.
Yeah.
Because we do lean so blue, and especially since Gavin Newsom was coming in with such strong Democratic support from the party and Jerry Brown and stuff like that. So that was interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, switching gears a little bit to your backgrounds and maybe why you voted the way you did, starting with both of you, well, Kaleo actually coming from a conservative family, but actually, you know, once you can vote next year or the following, you're going to be more on the progressive side. So how has it been in a household that's conservative, but your passions lie with more of the progressive views?
I think a lot of people have this perception like, oh, liberal kid, conservative parents, very common dynamic that we have. But I would say in my family, it's not as contentious as most people think. We like to have open dialogue, so that's kind of how my parents raised me. Not to always be set in your beliefs, but to always question things, to go beyond what other people are telling you and kind of think more personally and look at the facts and the issues. So I remember definitely during the 2016 election, we would watch debates during the primaries together, and we would be like, no, we need more gun control. And my dad would be like, no, we don't need more gun control. And just kind of the family dynamic we have where we can talk about the issues that are important, but still obviously live together. I think that's something that America needs right now. We need more people talking to each other who are not necessarily agreeing on the issues.
Oh, absolutely. I think it just widens our horizons in terms of what we can talk about and how we learn from each other. Not only talks about, we were talking about this divide, you know, it kind of brings us a little bit closer. And for both of you today, your background's obviously influencing a lot of your decisions voting wise, but for both of you, or I guess we'll start with you, Ray, having a split household too.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, well, so I grew up Catholic conservative. I'm half Latino, half Guamanian, but my mom's side is more liberal, my dad's more conservative. So my mom's side, it keeps me honest. It makes me go do my research. It makes me understand how I feel about the issues. But what it comes down to me is, how does it affect me? Does it hold my values, obviously, to God? But most importantly, my money. I mean, ever since I was younger, when I first got my job and I looked at my paycheck and I said, who's taking my money? I spend my money better than I do my government. And my dad said to me when I was 16 years old, that's a conservative type of thing. And then as I got older and I started making more money, that's what affected me the most. That's what was really at the forefront of my ideology, especially with my religion and you know, being fiscally conservative. Mostly responsible, but I think also what's really impassioned me is, you know, intersectionality politics has been really at the forefront of my politics now, is why I lean more conservative now.
And are you having a good night?
You know, I think with this election, locally, no, I'm not, because I'm really bummed that Deanda, you know, fell behind. I was kind of disappointed that Proposition 6 didn't get repealed. As I was mentioning earlier, I want to keep my money, not get taxed more. So locally, on local level, nah, not really.
Okay. And Inez, how's it going tonight?
I think, like I said a minute ago, a lot of it is has been mostly as expected.
Yep.
So I think, yeah, in California, there's not often very many big surprises where you kind of can project how things are going to go for the most part. So I guess it's just as expected, pretty much.
Absolutely. Well, and again, most of these numbers are still on their way in. Hasn't been super decided yet in terms of some races that have been called, but we're going to keep a check on those numbers. And talk to these people out here voting and people who live in our communities too. It's important to get their voices heard as well. So we'll send things back to Chris for now, but we will be checking in again at some point in the show.
Sounds good. Thanks, Madison. So how about let's take a look at these numbers, for Congress. Jeff Denham, 51% of the vote right now. Josh Harder, not far behind with 49% of the vote. We actually have live crews out at both of these camps tonight, trying to get an idea for how folks are feeling as the results are coming in, because look, this is just not even 30% of the vote in, and it's still a very close race. And so as you can imagine, this is something that many of us are watching here in California. So let's go out to our Liz Croyce. She is at the Denham camp. Talk to us about how folks are feeling there, Liz, as the results kind of trickle in, and it's still kind of a very tight race.
Yeah, that's right, Chris. Still really tight race. We're now seeing about 29% precincts reporting 51 to 49, excuse me, in Denham's favor, but it's still a long night to go, and we have a lot of precincts still to get in there. We were told that any minute now, Jeff Denham and his family are going to come through that door behind me at this party that he's having here for his supporters and fundraisers here and donors here in this converted barn in Modesto. A lot of his supporters, though, are kind of on eggshells right now. They're very nervous. They know this is a tight race. I spoke to one of his supporters here tonight, Don Moyer, who told me why he's so worried. Take a listen to this. I guess we don't have that sound. We'll bring it to you on the back end, but we're going to go to Lena Howland out right now at the Josh Harder event. Lena, how's it looking out there?
Hey Liz, well things are starting to fill up at Josh Harder's watch party. If you take a look behind me right now, this room is, a lot of people have just come in through the door. They started to trickle in just a little past 8:30 here, and I've been out here talking with a lot of Josh Harder supporters, and many of them are telling me they are feeling very hopeful. Yes, they are on edge because this is an extremely, extremely tight race. Of course they are nervous, but many of them are hopeful. They say they are ready for a change. This 10th district, they say, needs a little bit of fresh air. It needs a little bit of a change. That's what they are hoping to accomplish in this election today. So again, these people are out here, many of which are volunteers. They have been out at the polling stations today and throughout this time frame. They're hopeful. They're ready for a change. This line behind me, a lot of these people, they are just getting ready for a little bit of a snack. They're getting some food. They're getting some drinks. And we have also seen Josh Harder's family greeting some of the people as they walk through the door. Josh Harder isn't here just yet, but we are hoping to see him here anytime soon. So for now, we're going to continue to stay out here and talk to a lot of these supporters and let you know what they say. For now, though, Liz, we're going to toss things right back over to you.
All right, thanks, Lena. You know, oftentimes when we cover these campaigns, there's a lot of staff roaming around that we can talk to kind of get a sense of how they're feeling. But I have to say that this campaign has been very tight-lipped. We're trying to talk to their campaign manager and their, of course, Congressman Denham, but yet we haven't been able to at this point. So to get a sense of really how they're feeling has been a little bit challenging. Of course, I did say that some of his supporters who've talked to us are pretty nervous. And one of the central issues to this campaign between both candidates has been health care. We also know that that's been an issue really across the country that's been a driving issue for a lot of people to get to the polls. And last year, Jeff Denham did vote for the GOP plan to replace Obamacare, and that did upset a lot of his constituents. You may remember those videos of those raucous town halls with a lot of people in this area coming out and criticizing that vote. Now, we've asked him about that, and he did say pre-existing conditions was what he believed needed to be in that plan for him to vote for, and he said it was in there, and that's why he ultimately did vote for it. But a lot of his constituents to this day are angry at him for that vote and believe that he really turned his back on voters after saying he wasn't going to vote for that bill or that plan. And Josh Harder has capitalized on that. He's running campaign ad after campaign ad going after that. At the same time, though, Denham has launched back with equally or greater attack ads against Josh Harder that I think also could really sink in this district. They're calling him Bay Area Harder with San Francisco values. They're going after Harder for the fact that he hasn't voted in past elections. And a lot of political scientists will say it, that Harder really isn't what you call sort of a quality challenger. He's not very well known in this district. He's young, never held office, and so it'll be interesting to see how voters turn and what they decide to do. Guys, back to you.
Some great points, Liz. It is something we're going to be watching. We'll come back to you throughout the show. Meanwhile, let's take a look at some of the other House races, huh? Let's see if we cannot bring up some of those results, and we'll just go through them as they come up. Let's, as we see here, John Garamendi there with 57% of the vote, with just some of the votes starting to come in. So it's still very early, but there are the numbers there. The Democrat John Garamendi ahead there. Let's go on to the next numbers here if we can. and see what are some of the other House races. Tom McClintock, there he is, 54% of the vote, Republican Tom McClintock. You know, there were some folks saying, should we watch this race? What would happen with this race? And there you see the numbers there on your screen, still very early. Let's go on to the next House race if we can, to see if we can't get you some more results. Doris Matsui there, very popular as you see. The Democrat there doing well. From the challenger, also a Democrat, but we see Doris Matsui seems to be fine right now. And let's go on to the next race if we can, to see what those numbers are. Ami Bera, a closer race for the incumbent here, but Ami Bera is kind of holding the challenger off as we speak, and so that will be one that we'll be watching as well throughout the night. This is a big election night, and we want to make sure that we're getting you all the election results that we can, and there you have the next House district there. And as you can see, again, it's very early, but there you see the results coming in, still kind of close, but there you have 53% of the vote for Jerry McInerney. And so it's one that we will also be watching throughout the night. You also have the results there scrolling on the bottom of your screen. I think now we want to try to get back over to our brothers, our Deleuze brothers. You know, this is kind of a reflection of what we are seeing across the country, especially with this particular president, where families have kind of split down the middle, if you will.
I'm trying to handle my business.
and so we have tonight two brothers, a Republican and a Democrat in the House, to kind of react to some of the news. Brandon, it's all yours, sir.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We've been having some fun conversations up here. One of which is the soul searching among Democrats right now. And before I get to the Feinstein race, let's talk a little bit about Nancy Pelosi, who was up there speaking tonight. Right. She was trying to kind of give like a bit of a vision of a platform. Seemed like a little bit deer in the headlights while she was doing it. But is she going to be the speaker? Let's start with that.
Well, I think, and Craig and I were talking about this earlier, and he had a very good point, and that is that, you know, she's raised the architect. She's raised a lot of money. She's the architect of this turnaround. Mm-hmm. She is the architect, so you kind of got to give it to her. But I wouldn't be surprised if there were a challenge, a serious challenge.
I definitely believe there'll be a serious challenge, and I would expect that the Democrats are going to do a whole lot to try and take her out. But in the end, politics is a lot about money. It's a lot about fundraising. And unless you're organizing, unless you can find somebody who is of the more progressive end of the party and can raise money, I don't see a change happening.
Yeah,
which is for Democrats, I feel bad for, boo-hoo, because you're going to see a real lack of vision in the Democratic Party.
So let's say there's some bluster and some camp starts to circle around somebody, an alternative, but it doesn't end up taking her out. Does that kneecap her out of the gate, or does that actually,
It'll make her stronger, actually, especially if she can beat it back. But at the end of the day, again, I hate agreeing with him. But I think that because she can bring the institutional dollars, she can bring the big money, it's going to be really hard to move away from a Nancy Pelosi at this time, because there's nobody else within the party that's got the experience and bona fides that she does. Love her or hate her, she's the king right now.
Yeah. She organized the ball.
Yeah.
There you go. Got it. Understood. Yeah. Understood. Let's talk a little bit about Dianne Feinstein, who's ahead by less than 10 points against her Democratic challenger, Kevin De Leon. What do you make of that, and is her team doing some soul searching tonight?
Well, I think that they're counting on the institutional folks. I think they're counting in part on Republican support because, you know, Republicans look at De Leon and they look at Feinstein, and as much as we despise Feinstein on many, many things, she's the conservative in the race.
You figured out who's the Republican and the Democrat.
Yeah, just in case you didn't know.
There we go.
Look,
go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, but I mean, folks pretty much, at the very least, she's the conservative in the race, and as scary as that is, you know, for Republicans, I think that also, though, Republicans also believe that we've got a better shot at potentially winning that seat in a future election if we're running against Feinstein as opposed to De Leon.
And Feinstein, on the other side of that, Feinstein is not the darling of the ultra-liberal left.
Right.
And that's
wasn't even endorsed by her party.
Which is why she's got competition coming up at her heels.
And remember, the race for the party chair was very hotly contested by the pro-Bernie Democrats, et cetera. And by extension,
the Democratic
that's
Socialists.
That's where De Leon got a lot of his.
Let's just shorten it. They're socialists.
Anyway, my party is not socialist.
Oh, they're Democratic Socialists. I forgot.
But yeah, get it right.
There you go.
But at the end of the day, she's the king. You know, she is the dean of our federal legislative delegation, and she's it. She's it. And De Leon's not going to beat her.
Yeah. All right.
So 10 points, 2 points, it doesn't matter. It's a W in her book.
Yeah. All right. Lots to parse, lots of tea leaves to read, and lots more results yet to come in, guys.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right. I think we have Dianne Feinstein, actually, who is live now. Let's listen in as she has won yet another campaign here in California.
To represent my city and my state in the Senate of the United States. Woo! And know that the number of you that are here, because after all, I've had a few terms, is really surprising to me. And as I walked into this jammed room, somewhat overheated, I thought, you know, how lucky I am to have a constituency like this. How lucky I am to have a family, husband, daughter, stepdaughters that support me. And I just want you to know, ladies and gentlemen, that I will do everything in my power to be the kind and type of United States Senator, not only that I have been, but hopefully having learned from the years, gained the experience, able to provide the leadership as the lead Democrat on the Judiciary Committee. First woman. What's not lost on anyone is when I got there, there were no women. And now, Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar, a senator from Hawaii, Mazie Hirono. Now there are 4 women on the Democratic side of the Senate, the Judiciary Committee. And we work together, and we work with others, and I hope you'll find our service very forceful and special for you. Those of you that are women, those of you who are men. This is such a great country, and it's been factionalized and trivialized with rhetoric. We must stop that. We must come together as the great power that we are for the good of the nation and, I think, of mankind. Thank you for your support. Let's hope the vote goes well tonight. Thank you very much.
Senator Dianne Feinstein addressing her supporters tonight. She'd had a challenge from the left and Kevin De Leon, but she appears will be able to hold off that challenge and that she will be going back to Washington as one of the senators from California. As we continue looking at some of our local numbers, let's look at some of the measures that we've been seeing here. City of Sacramento, the Measure U, we see that is doing well right now as some of the votes are coming in. That will continue a half-cent sales tax and add a half-cent more. The mayor saying he wants to do some things with housing and things of that nature. Okay, for Measure L in Davis, that also is doing well. This was where they wanted to take agricultural land and use it for residential areas, mixed-use land for active adult communities. And so there you see there the Davis Measure L is doing well. What other measures do we have that we want to show right now? The Roseville Measure B, a half-cent general sales tax. It would deliver $16 to $19 million annually for Roseville, and so that will be a great deal of money coming in for Roseville if this stays on track, as it appears it will. And then the Tracy Measure M. This had to do with affordable housing and spaces for seniors and dealing with the high cost of living. And so there in Tracy, Measure M is also doing well. All of those measures are doing well. And let's look here, Sacramento County. There you see some other results there flowing on your screen. Let's see if we cannot get some reaction to all of these results that are coming in from social now. If we can. I understand that we've got our social gurus standing by with Madison. Madison, what are you hearing from folks on social?
Oh, yeah, Chris. Well, a lot of people are chiming in, obviously, now that we're getting a lot more results. But a really big thing we want to point out, Elena actually was able to pull this up. If you want to come over this way so we can see a little bit closer, these memes, if you will, of people talking about how they were voting in 2016 versus voting in 2018. Elena, take it away.
Yeah, I know that we actually had spoken about this earlier, Madison, about how much more passionate people have gotten with voting, it seems like. So these memes actually kind of show how lighthearted and fun voting in 2016 seemed to a lot of these people, and how passionate and vivacious they are going into vote in 2018.
Yeah.
So some of these things, we have Sansa from Game of Thrones, season 1 versus season 7, me voting in 2016 versus me in 2018. We have the actress from Mad Men, and then her in that Hulu show. I cannot remember.
Handmaid's Tale.
Handmaid's Tale, exactly. And then as you scroll down, there's more and more. My favorite is Tim Allen in the Santa Claus from before he was Santa Claus to after he was 2018 voting Santa Claus, it seems like. So a lot of people going online. If you want to go ahead and share out the same thing, put a before and an after picture, me voting in 2016 versus me voting in 2018, but don't forget to tag ABC10 because we want to see it.
Absolutely. And let us know, too, if that's how you're feeling as well. It's good to talk to you all and hear from you. So we're going to send things back to Chris now.
Sounds good. You know, we've got more results coming in just a moment. But first, we wanted to find out what made you willing to brave the long lines, leave work to vote. Our Mady Gomez got in line to find out.
Okay, so we just arrived to Marysville. This is
Yuba County.
All right, so let's go out there and talk to some folks and find out what motivated you to vote.
I happen to agree with, like, nationally, the way a lot of agree with what the president's doing. One about the gas tax and the license, vehicle license, that was one that voted for it to repeal it.
It is so expensive right now to rent in California. It's something that we really should be paying attention to. It's really important for us to be voting on governor right now because that's obviously going to impact me personally. It's going to impact everybody in California.
Always been, I don't tell people how to vote, but I do tell people you need to vote whatever, you know, what you feel you need to vote for or against.
You know, you don't have to tell people who to vote for, but you need to vote, right? And it seems like, I think once the numbers come in, that we are going to see that we did see a number of people going out to vote. We'll be right back. You were watching some of the election results scroll on your screen there, and we want to go over to our Brandon Ritterman now for a look at some of your questions you're getting about how are we making these decisions on projections. Brandon.
Yeah, so Elena's watching our social media conversation for us, and this has been quite the talker tonight, this whole idea of calling races. What are you hearing?
Well, a lot of people are kind of confused on the idea of a projected winner.
Okay.
So, for instance, with the Gavin Newsom race, we projected that ABC News projected him to be the projected winner. So Sunshine actually had this question. She said, polls just closed. This was about an hour ago. She said she's kind of confused on how the race is already being called. This is a question we're seeing a lot from people.
Yeah, okay. So this is interesting because I've actually been involved in calling races in my career before. And one of the things you look at is where are the votes coming from, right? And if there is going to be perhaps some stronghold of support, say for Cox in this specific race, you're looking at what counties are reporting at this point, and are there enough votes that are gettable out there for him? Because you do have an idea of the political landscape. So it's sort of this, it's part art and it's part science. You're looking at the lay of the land on the ground. You're looking at what the voter registrations are in specific places. And then you use that to sort of extrapolate from what we know in the universe already and what's coming out of County X versus County Y versus what is still out there waiting to come in, and could it be enough to make up the gap? And what you're seeing is there's a wide enough spread already in the governor's race in California. Set aside that this is not a surprise result, but there's not enough votes out in the universe to make up that gap. Likewise, when you started seeing, before we even had our polls closed in California, we already had national organizations calling the entire House, right?
Absolutely,
For Democrats and the entire Senate.
About that as well,
for Republicans, it's very much the same thing there. It's what's attainable for either side, and none of these projections say, oh well, the Democrats are going to have exactly this many seats in the House, and they're going to have exactly this many in the Senate. It doesn't work exactly like that, but people do want to know that top line result. And by looking at what's out in the universe, you're able to help people get a clearer picture of what to expect as the night goes on.
Absolutely.
So that's the idea.
Yeah, I hope that helps, Sunshine.
Oh, hey, Chris.
Hi.
I'm coming over to take you back over here.
It's an ad hoc party over here.
I'm coming because we're going to go over and talk about propositions. We want to try to get a check-in on how they're looking, how the numbers are looking.
I've seen some shifting, too.
Some people have some questions about those as well. So
they're coming in.
All right.
And so stick with us. We are online on abc10.com and, of course, on the ABC10 Facebook page for us to check in on those propositions. Let's go on over here while we're online and see if we can chat about these, huh?
Yes.
That's the good thing about having a working newsroom, huh? You can just keep it going.
You just walk right on over here. There we go. Keeping it interesting tonight.
I know, right?
11 propositions. Can you believe it?
Well, and the cool thing, what I was saying earlier, which I really do think is helpful, even our Monica Woods, meteorologist Monica Woods, was saying when it came time for her to sit down with those propositions, you just were so overwhelmed that she felt like because you did that YouTube page where we could actually go in and look at it one by one, you broke it down for us in simple people terms that we could understand.
Yeah, just try to give a straight down the middle look at what it is in under a minute on each of those questions, because there is a lot to unpack.
And that is something for you to be able to do that in under a minute with some of this stuff that's just so complex. If we have those propositions, we'll try and roll through them.
Here we go.
Here we go.
All right. So we will start with Prop 1 right here. This is housing programs.
Yeah.
And this is a bunch of borrowing to spend to build affordable housing. That one's looking pretty solid right now. It wasn't earlier tonight, but that one's flipped around. Prop 2 has been looking good all night, and this one comes out of a dedicated source of money, unlike the rest. The rest are all paid out of general tax dollars. This one comes out of the millionaire's tax.
And that one's doing much better than the other.
And that I think is reflected in these numbers. It's also a sympathetic cause. You're talking about mentally ill homeless people and building housing for them. Then if we roll on to Prop 3, this one's been really struggling tonight. It is the largest spending package of the 4 bond propositions.
People just spin out by the time you get here, huh?
Yeah, well, you're talking about, multi-billion-dollar questions here, and water projects, when you start talking about dams and infrastructure and that kind of stuff, gets really expensive.
Kind of wonky, too,
Could be sticker shock. Could be that people didn't buy that was going to actually do enough for the water problem for the price. Whatever it is, it's going down right now. Prop 4 is the last of the bonds, and if we can take a look at that, this is for children's hospitals. It's construction money towards children's hospitals. A lot of these are private organizations, but we're talking about forking over some taxpayer money towards them, and people are willing to do it.
And wait, I know we said we handed over some money. Where's the money coming from? Is it a new tax or something like that? Or
the flippant way to say it is we're putting it on the state's credit card, but in reality, it's more like taking out a home loan. Because the idea of a bond is you take out a big loan right now, it allows you to do a bunch of spending right away, and then you're going to pay it back over 30 to 40 years in the case of these bonds, much like your 30-year mortgage. Similar idea. It's not necessarily an evil way to do things. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. Sometimes you need to borrow to do something expensive. You never buy a house if you had to save your pennies and wait for it. So that's kind of the idea of that. Anyhow, people are saying the children's hospitals, it's worth it. We can roll on to Prop 5 here and check in on the results there. And you can see this one is going down. This was an interesting one. I think it was probably pretty hard for people to understand. It turned out to be the longest video. We did not keep this one under a minute.
You couldn't do this one under a minute.
But the idea basically is if you live in California, there's kind of this loyalty program for staying in your house if you've bought a house for a really long time because your taxes can only go up 2% a year, your property taxes. So if you've been in your house for decades and decades, you're paying a lot less than if you went out and bought that exact same house for the value that it's worth today than somebody else would. So this would allow people to have moved around the state instead of just in their own county
and keep
the discount on the property tax.
And folks didn't want to do that, huh?
People either maybe they didn't understand all the inner workings of it, or perhaps they took a look at the cost to local governments and schools because this would have reduced property taxes.
Right?
You got to pay for it. Exactly. Moving on to Prop 6, this is the gas tax.
Let's see how this is
would
looking.
repeal the gas tax increase that the state legislature put into effect last year. Would also handcuff the future
what is that
legislators.
reporting? That is 22% reporting. Okay, yeah.
There you go, 22% reporting. So that being said, this is a 10-point gap. It's going to be pretty hard to make that up over the course of the night, and this appears to be going down at this point.
Now, talk to me about this gas tax, because this was a controversial deal on the surface.
And this is SB1, right? So you drive around town, you see those under construction SB1 signs. You can see more of them because they're trying to put those out so you know where the money came from for these projects.
The gas tax, the whole idea was what? Was to, $2 billion it was supposed to generate to actually fix roads here in
the long run, they're talking maybe more like $5 billion a year as the thing ramps up, and it allows the gas tax to adjust up for inflation. So systemically, there are issues with the gas tax because it tends to be a per gallon tax as opposed to a percentage. So, right, your sales tax is just a percentage on the receipt when you go to the store. Gas tax has always been a set number of cents per gallon. Your car only needs so many gallons, and as cars get more fuel efficient, that's less money coming in for the state. So the idea is to let it keep up with inflation. And so that was part of the package the legislature put in place. This was meant to shove that all back in the legislature's face and tell them you can't ever do this again without asking voters. Right now, voters are saying, nah, we're cool.
Can I just say that only we could talk to you, Brandon, and you would be able to go, you can dig right down into the nitty-gritty of this stuff. You know what I mean? A lot of times people just say, I don't want to pay more for gas. But you're looking at the whole per gallon deal of it and all of these things that down the line, they're more than likely going to have to address at some point.
Make no mistake, there's going to be a crisis with gas tax sometime in the future. If we all move to electric cars, the gas tax isn't going to build a mile of road, right?
Well, and that's the other point. That's the other point, right?
But that's a future problem.
But is that not something that at least some of the Democrat, one of the policies that they're pushing is that they would like to see California move
states right now are in this big sort of conundrum about what to do about that. They're talking about pay per mile as a concept, but that feels very Big Brother to some people. You know, right? It's a lot easier to charge you for a gallon of gas. No one asks questions about how many miles you drove your car. You know what I mean? If they put a little transponder in your car, people are going to be a little freaked out about that. So there are going to be some problems working through road funding and how to pay for it in the future. All right, moving on to Prop 7. And now, one of the fascinating things to me about Prop 7, and I'm going to look here. All right, you'd have to do the math to add up these votes and compare it, but there were hundreds of thousands fewer votes on this than the other props. So what I'm thinking happened here is you've got some people who were like, you know, whatever my neighbors want with the daylight saving time, that's cool.
I don't know, though.
It's something like a fourth or a third less people than most of the other ballot questions weighed in.
But here is the deal,
though.
They moved on. Okay, they're telling us we need to go out to John Cox. He is speaking. He was the Republican candidate for governor. Let's listen in.
And your team, Victoria E. and all the people, and Sarah Lee, thank you for adding your efforts to this as well. And of course, the guy that drove me around, one of the Davids, David Morgan, as well as David Cushman, our grassroots director. So thank you all. Hope I included everybody in that. You know, Any effort has to have a great team. Every effort has to have people that believe in you. And I hope that each and every one of you believes in the mission that we made this campaign about. And if there's anything that we did, I consider myself very proud that we highlighted the incredible struggle that the people of this state have had for years under the people that are running this state. We identified the needs of these people, the fact that they can't afford
We'll continue
housing,
listening
they can't
in here,
afford
but we also want to show you some video as Josh Harder is arriving at his campaign headquarters. Let's take you out to Lena Howland.
Hey guys, that's right. Josh Harder has just walked into his watch party right now. If we pan around, you can see him just starting. At least.
Oh, I think I heard her. Of course, we're live, folks. This is a live TV, and so we can tell you that Josh Harder did arrive there at his campaign. Do we want to go back out and listen to John Cox, or would we like to continue our conversation with the props? Let's go back in and listen to John Cox.
Today. And Larry Hogan is the governor of Maryland. Maryland has a Republican registration that's lower than ours. Now, the good news in Maryland for Larry is that he didn't need anywhere near as much money. It's a much smaller state than California. So that's the challenge in California. That's the challenge in gathering the resources to get the message out that the Republican Party stands for improving the quality of life for hardworking Californians. And let me tell you what this party also has to stand for. It has to stand for changing our political system. We have to, one thing that I'm really proud of is that we took the high road in this campaign. We ran a campaign based upon issues and not personal attacks. I tell you what, I lament the loss of civility that we have had and we have seen in politics. And if I have anything to say about it, we're going to bring honor and civility back into our politics. But make no mistake about it, what we also need to do is we need to address the elephant in the room, and it really is an elephant, and that is the corrupting influence of special interest money. The big businesses and the big labor unions and the lobbyist class in Sacramento has had their way. They have run this state down. And I hope the lieutenant governor has a success, but you know what? He's not going to have that much success unless he deals with the influence peddlers and the people that would bend policy for their own profit. We need urgent reforms. The status quo is the status quo because somebody likes it that way and somebody's making money from it.
Let's take a listen in to Josh Harder now as he's speaking to his supporters.
2 years. It's been a long time. Are we feeling good out there? We're feeling good? It's been a lot of work to get here. Well, first, a little bit of an update. We're not going to know what happens tonight. That's the update. It's going to be a long time, but we are going to make sure that every single vote gets counted and that every voice is heard. Because that's what this campaign is all about. But outside of our little district, we took back the House. That's pretty great. We saw folks across this country come together. And in many ways, I think what we're seeing across our nation right now in this community is a rebuke to the last 2 years. It's a rebuke to the politics of hatred, of division, of fear. We don't believe that. We reject that. And that's what we've done across this country tonight. But it's also much more than that. Because we didn't just run a campaign saying no to all those things. We didn't even spend much time on that. We spent a campaign painting a picture of a much brighter and better future for this community and across this nation. That's what this is all about. And we see this. We spent our time talking about what a world would look like when it doesn't matter if you have asthma or diabetes or cancer, you still deserve affordable health care. That's what this is. A community where it doesn't matter what your immigration status is, you deserve a chance to work hard and get ahead. That's it. And most importantly, it doesn't matter how you're born or where you live, you deserve a shot at the American dream. That's what this is all about. And we're going to continue to fight that. And that's why I'm so proud of the work that we've done here. Our real opponent was not somebody else on the ballot. It was apathy and cynicism. It was people thinking that the political process didn't have any peace for them. People believing that it didn't matter if their voice got heard because nothing was going to change. Across the country, we've seen that rejected tonight. That's the communications that we've had with voters again and again. The antidote to that cynicism, the antidote to that apathy, is making sure that everyone understands how their lives are affected, the personal consequences of the policy failures of those 2 years. People casting a ballot over the last couple days, even today, have been thinking about the loved ones in their life affected by those failures of the last 2 years. Thinking about the immigrants in our community. That's what we based this campaign on. And that's what matters. We don't know how things are going to turn out.
You have been listening in to Josh Harder as he is addressing his supporters. And you had some interesting things you were saying about the numbers. He's being very cautious here. And why is that?
Yeah, and you can see his campaign didn't spring for the lighting and the hold on, everyone, let's wait for the results part of the stage. But right now, we've got less than half the vote in District 10. And it's less than 1,000 votes difference right now. And if you're Harder right now, even though he's trailing at this point, he's looking and hoping that the election day turnout is going to be enough to put him over the edge. You know, we hear, it's sort of an old trope in politics, but it rings true, is that the conservatives who vote very regularly and you know, don't miss an election, they know who they want, they get that early ballot in more often. Whereas, you know, some more liberal wings of voters need to be driven to the polls sometimes. You're trying to motivate younger voters to participate in the process, et cetera. And he's going to be hoping that that's going to be enough to put him over the edge at a 2-point difference. If you take a look at the raw vote count right there, we're talking just about an even 1,000 votes. As ground to make up. I'm not going to say it's not ground to make up, but it is not a race I would be comfortable calling at this point. And that's what he's trying to do, is sort of tell his supporters, hang on, let's just wait and see how this goes.
I want to get into another bit of news that we're getting from the AP on the propositions front, if we can prepare that graphic for folks. And that is on Prop 10, I think it is.
Indeed.
When it comes to rent control, that rent control has been rejected in California.
Yeah, this is an expansion of rent control, and what you need to understand about this prop is it wouldn't have enacted some big rent control policy, but it would have allowed cities and counties to do more kinds of rent control. And you can see this is an insurmountable obstacle. It's more than 1 million votes if you just take a look at the raw vote count right now. So even though there's only 25% of the vote in, you just take a look at this, and those votes are not out there to be made up at this point. It is about 2/3 against this thing. And it's interesting because this was looking to expand rent control. It was really trying to open the floodgates and let cities and counties do kind of willy-nilly what they want.
But you know,
rent control.
I think the opposition side of this thing really made the argument that this would not help the housing crisis, but make the housing crisis worse, because you would have builders saying, look, you know, if there's no profit to be had here, or if you're going to box us in on what we can and what we cannot do, then are you really solving anything?
And it was really hard to make any sort of definitive declaration about what's going to happen if this passes, because it could be different city to city. It would have allowed cities to do wildly different policies on rent control. And yeah, so you get a city council that wants to try some experiment. If the experiment doesn't go well, I think people were kind of voting for the status quo here, even though the status quo, I think both sides would tell you, isn't great right now, and that housing costs aren't ideal. The bottom line is it is a housing market, and I think people weren't ready to throw this big of a change into that market at this point, and you can see a 2/3 vote against at this point. We'll see if that holds that strongly throughout the night, but at this point, the AP calling the race against this, saying it's gone down, and I think it's a good call. I just don't see a way to bounce back from these numbers and have this question pass.
We're going to keep trying to scroll through these propositions here, because we know people want to see some of the results and how people are feeling about things here in our area. And so if we can take the 2 box, that'll give us a better idea to be able to view which ones we're looking at and that type of thing, and we'll be able to know.
All right. Yep. And
this
so
is Proposition 11 here.
Yep, you're taking a look at Prop 11. This had to do with lunch breaks for private ambulance workers, which seems like an oddly specific thing for us all to be voting on.
Just wait a minute, just wait, because I saw these commercials.
Yeah.
And they were, you're right, they were talking about when they could take a lunch break.
Yep.
And the whole idea here is that, look, we want to be at the ready at the moment's notice, and so sure, pay us through our lunch break.
Yeah. The idea was to keep them on call and on lunch break at the same time so that they could be called in. Now, in practical terms, that's what's already happening on the ground. However, there was a lawsuit involving security workers that had this same kind of thing come up, and the union won on that. And there was a very similar lawsuit going on with these private ambulance companies saying, look, what our bosses are doing to us, it isn't kosher under state labor laws. Let's have it out in court. And this was a way for those ambulance companies to sort of shut that lawsuit down and say, you know what, let's just go ahead and change the rules. We bet the voters are going to say, yeah, it makes good solid sense to keep you on a lunch break and on call at the same time. And guess what?
Seems
the
like
voters
that was a good bet.
And guess what? If you opened your official state voter guide that went to every single voter in the state, you would have seen no one turned in an argument against it.
Wow.
Which the unions then later regretted, but at this point, you have to have a no campaign if you want to try and convince people to vote no. There really wasn't one, and now it's gone down.
All right, next up, what do we have here?
Prop 12, all about animals. And yes, it has, let's see, there's pregnant pigs and veal calves, but the thing is, there's not much of an industry for either of those two things in the state of California when you compare it to the chickens, the hens, layers, and this has to do with how much space farmers have to give egg-laying hens. And it also removes the ability to have any kind of cage in the facilities. There was a faction of animal rights people against this because they argued that the Humane Society, which was behind this, was adopting the actual standards the egg industry wanted, which gives just a little more than a square foot per hen of space. They can all be in this big barn together, and so they can roam around it, but they're still allowed to pack them in pretty tight.
And I know we actually spoke to some voters tonight who said that this was one of the things that drove them out to the polls. That they wanted to vote. Yeah, they wanted to vote on this particular proposition.
Very interesting. And you had a stab at a lot of issues. That's the thing with 11 questions. There were a lot of things to vote on.
Okay, so folks back in the booth, I'm going to throw a curveball for you. Can we go to Proposition 7? I want to look at 7 because that's the one with daylight savings time.
If you're still feeling a little tired.
Right. Because
if you're still feeling a little tired. This is a fun one because there was no polling on it whatsoever, but the thing is passing gangbusters right now. Almost
so
two-thirds.
what was this saying about daylight saving time? What was the actual question here?
Okay. We don't have the power as the state of California to change our time zone. So you got to understand that. So think of this as kind of an advisory question, but it basically enables the legislature to try to go to Congress and ask, pretty please, Congress, may we change our time zone and be on the exact same time as Arizona.
So saying that we don't want to have to fall back and spring forward and all that stuff.
Exactly. So the idea, if you voted for this, you're voting for the possibility
that we won't do
that California will get rid of the twice-a-year time change, and the people behind this are saying, hey, what we want to do is move to the same time as Arizona, which is basically a mountain standard time all year, or think of it as Pacific daylight all year. So the time zone we just left behind, and now it's getting dark a little bit earlier. If you want a little bit of sunlight a little later in the day all year round, that's what they're going for. But again, we can't do it on our own.
Well, and that's the thing that I guess we have to stress with this one, y'all. I mean, more than 60% of people saying, yeah, I'm sick of springing forward and falling back.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, it takes an act of Congress to really change this
And
thing.
it takes an act of the state legislature, which couldn't have acted without this vote. So basically what we've done is empower this, if this holds, which it will, I mean, look at that. This is basically telling the state lawmakers, okay, go ahead and pass the thing, and let's go get the ball rolling, asking Congress, will it ever happen?
Prop, let's look at some of the congressional races, because we just want to kind of offer some analysis of some of these things.
Sure.
There's some other congressional races that are out there. John Garamendi, the Democrat, there, 56% of the vote coming in. Any thoughts on this one?
That's a very safe lead at this point. It would be really difficult to make up the ground on a race like that.
Keep it moving. What's up next? Who do we have? Tom McClintock. There were some who were saying maybe this would be one to watch.
Yeah, and if this was the blue tsunami night, that number would look a lot closer than it does right now. So this is looking fairly safe for McClintock at this point. Again, there's still more vote out there to come in, but this is not looking like the Denham-Harder race where we've got, you know, a mere 1,000 votes in between. We're looking at tens of thousands of votes.
I think the booth is trying to tell me something. What y'all trying to tell me? Say again? Keep going. Keep on going.
They're trying to tell us we're doing a good job.
They're telling. Keep talking. Okay. Doris Matsui, they called that one.
Yeah, 82-18. That's a no-brainer of a call right there. So that's a perfectly safe result right there. And Matsui safely in the orbit of Nancy Pelosi and her camp is going to cruise to a victory right there.
Ami Bera. This is the incumbent here. Yep. It's a close race, but he seems to be in pretty good shape too, huh?
This looks fairly safe. Again, it's not quite as big of a spread as some of the races that we just covered. However, that's looking pretty solid. Again, not as close as that Denham-Harder race, which was the squeaker in our area. We knew that was going to be the case all along.
Next. There we have this one as well, same 52-48.
Very, very similar result right here. It would take something pretty significant to steer this in a different direction than the result is showing us at this point.
All right. So these are just some of the results. You have others scrolling there on the bottom of your screen. One of the main things that we've been noticing is that so many people came out to vote today.
Absolutely.
And we wanted to know, well, what was it that drove folks to the polls? Our Mady Gomez, she was out on the road. She was all over the place today trying to get a sense of what drove people out to the polls. Let's take a look.
We're on the road, headed to Yuba City, and we want to hear from you. Tell us what motivates you to vote.
Well, there's the gas tax. That was one of them, I guess, and who's governor is always important.
But being so pro-democratic, it's almost a foregone conclusion. And that kind of takes the thrill out of it. I'd rather see a closer contested race.
I just think it's really important as someone who is younger to come out and vote and make sure that we're being heard and that the things that we are passionate about are being voted for.
Yeah.
And then we go towards the liberal side. Kind of right, left. Oh, we're opposed. That's wrong. No, but still a Democrat.
Okay. It is election night in America, and you know we say all across the country that this is one of those elections where families have just been so divided. You have brothers and uncles and aunties all going at each other, and just to prove the point, we've got two brothers here, the DeLuz brothers, who one a Republican, one a Democrat. The Republican has on the blue tonight. What's that about? And you got on kind of the red going.
Look, I got on orange. I'm trying to channel positive energy. I'm trying to channel the sunshine.
Those are the colors of the Democratic Socialist Party.
Oh boy, this is the type of thing. Y'all gonna have a fun Thanksgiving, aren't you? Talk to us about. We look at the results. We see that the Democrats will take back the House. The Senate will hold their place in the Senate. The Republicans will hold their place in the Senate.
Actually gain seats.
What do you think? This doesn't look like a blue wave to me.
It's not a blue wave, but I tell you what, it does set
Is
up.
it a trickle?
It's more than a trickle.
It's more like a toilet flush.
No, it's
low flow toilet flush.
Oh my goodness! What happened? What happened?
It's a swell. It is a swell. It's a slow-moving swell that by 2020, because we've gained 4, almost 5 governor seats.
He came in with his talking point, didn't he?
Oh, yeah.
It's a swell if we're set up for...
Democrats are going to win the redistricting war this time around so that in future elections, we won't have this problem.
Well, that's actually still not the case because Republicans are still in the majority. They're still in the majority of most state houses. They're still in the majority of They still hold the majority of governorships. I think they did what the party that loses the presidential election, they did what they're supposed to do, and that's they gained ground.
Okay, I have to ask you, just for people who are looking at California, they say nothing much changed in California either. The Democrats continue to run the board in California. Any surprises there? You feeling good about tonight? How are the brothers feeling?
I'm feeling
good. You got
good.
15 seconds.
I'm feeling good about tonight. We still have to watch Orange County because there are 4 seats that could still fall into the Democratic column. So there's still some more movement that's going to happen.
In Orange County, say it ain't so. But we may have a Republican statewide election.
The conversation continues online.
Yes.
All right, so we're online now. So the
good.
interesting thing, the thing that I wanted to chat with you guys about is we look at some of these results and we think, well, the media had this whole narrative going of this has been so divisive and people are tired of this. And but did much really change, or are we still maybe in the status quo that we were before the election?
No, there's a lot that's changed tonight.
Okay.
The fact that you now have one part of one branch of government in control by the Democrats creates institutional advantage, creates money advantages, which starts to shift the playing field for the next election in 2020. So
but talk to me, brother who's a Republican, talk to me about this. Do you feel, what play do you think the Democrats ought to make with this? Should they come in and try and go for impeachment, or ought they try and work with the president and try and get some things done, say infrastructure?
I think the worst thing that they could do is come in with the mentality of we want to investigate. And I said this earlier. You have those who want to investigate and those who want to legislate. Those, if they come in with the attitude,
that. Investigate or legislate, which one is it going to be?
If they come in with the idea of legislating, then what they do is they can say, we're the adults in the room. And they've got a president who is a deal maker. So he wants to get things done. He would like to get infrastructure done. What they want to do is they want to pass that out of the House and make the Republicans look like the obstructionists. The Republicans want to beat him to the punch, pass it out of the Senate, and send it over to the House.
But the Senate's going to do what it's always done, what it's done for the last 8 years under Obama and the last 2 years under, well, actually, last year under Obama. When the Democrats start proposing things, the Republicans in the Senate are going to squash any Democratic idea.
The question,
is it going to be real infrastructure or is it going to be human infrastructure?
No. So I asked him the question. I want to know your take on it. Do you feel that we will see Democrats come in? Will they want to investigate or will they want to legislate?
I think that it's going to be a mix of strategies. I think they're going to come in because they're going to have this newfound power. I think they're going to want to flex their muscles a little bit. But it all depends on how the president and Mitch McConnell want to approach. It depends on how they're rolling out what they want to do. If they are strictly, it's my way or the highway, then you're going to have this adversarial relationship. But if they really come back and say, we really want to make some deals, then I think you're going to see some willingness to play.
We are just trying to give you an idea of you said not to say divided, but just how the country is right now. You have sometimes families who are really at each other on the political spectrum. Here you are, our two brothers, Republican, Democrat. Thanksgiving coming up. Y'all got to go and sit down and eat and work together on these things. But there will be a lot of conversation. What do you think the big takeaway will be after tonight's election?
You know, I think the big takeaway is going to be that the fight is going to continue. But see, and here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with disagreement. The problem that we've had the last few years is how we disagree. In other words, I'm supposed to not treat him like the loyal opposition or someone that I disagree with. I'm supposed to treat him like the enemy. And he's supposed to treat me like the enemy. And if you look at, that's what's going on in social media. And so it makes it hard to have that conversation that you really need to have, where you can actually have point and counterpoint.
We're actually waiting. We expect Newsom to step to the mic here shortly, and we will take that in just a moment. So stick around for that. We've been given the 5-minute warning that he will be stepping to the mic in just a moment, and as soon as he does, we'll go out to Gavin Newsom, who is the governor-elect. And so talk to us about that race, the governor's race. A lot of people say, what race? We didn't see a lot of the ads in that race, and I'm told that Newsom is stepping to the podium now. So if we can, let's see if we cannot take that image live, and let's see what type of reaction we're getting there from the Newsom camp. We'll listen in.
Still awake, and I'm honored that you took the time to be here. And look, the votes, goes without saying, the votes are still being counted, and clearly your voices are still being heard. But a few minutes ago, I received a very generous call from John Cox. Thank you. We congratulated each other on a hard-fought race, and now I want to congratulate each and every one of you. Because you stood for courage for a change. And now I can stand before you knowing I will have the incredible privilege of serving as your next governor. But this victory is really your victory. Because of you, the future belongs to California. It's been a tough 2 years, but tonight, America's biggest state is making the biggest statement in America. We're saying unmistakably and in unison that it's time to roll the credits on the politics of chaos and the politics of cruelty. Now is time for going far and going together. Now is the time for decency, for facts, for trust, and now is the time for truth. Now is time for leaders to lead. And to those agents of anger determined to divide us instead of unite us, it's time to pack it up and for you to pack it in. This, in every way, shape, or form, is California's moment. And to those who wonder whether polarization is permanent, who think today's big dreams are tomorrow's broken promises, who question whether a 40 million person melting pot of different faiths, different families and futures can live and prosper together, California is your answer. The sun is rising in the west, and the arc of history is bending in our direction. Because this is not just a state of resistance. California is a state of results. California is America's coming attraction, a rocket-fueled engine of human industry and innovation, the nation's greatest job creator, and the 5th largest economy in the world. But the true genius of California isn't the value we work for, it's the values we fight for. This is a state where, you know, we don't criminalize diversity, we celebrate diversity. We don't reject, we protect the most vulnerable. We don't put profit and loss ahead of clean air. We don't put profit and loss ahead of clean water and clean coastlines. We don't regulate a woman's body more than we regulate assault weapons on our streets. We don't demean, we don't discriminate, and we don't demoralize. We don't separate families, and we don't lock kids in cages. At our best, we always stand up, we step in, and we fight for what's right. See, there's a reason why California's dream is America's leading brand. Because California's dream has always been and always will be too big to fail and too powerful to bully. And here's the thing. The California dream, it's not binary. Every day we show how human endeavor can be both lucrative and inclusive. They aren't mutually exclusive. We don't just want success in the right hands, we want it in everybody's hands. But let's be honest, there's no doubt about this, the dream is still too distant for too many. We're a land of plenty, but we are far from perfect. Too many Californians are being priced out of housing, of health care, and higher education. Too many workers are feeling the ever-tightening squeeze of automation and wage stagnation. Too many children are growing up in poverty and starting school from behind. In many ways, in many places, we are simultaneously the richest and the poorest state. But after traveling California from region to region in a bus fueled by perpetual optimism, I'm more convinced than ever there's no problem in California that isn't somehow, somewhere being solved by a Californian. That's what Californians do, right? We're the most diverse state in the world's most diverse democracy. Californians by birth, Californians by choice, every generation overcoming every conceivable border and bias, all part of the same journey to ascend and succeed together. Over our own journey, in the course of this campaign, I've seen it in the hopeful faces of many. I've heard it in their indelible personal stories. I've seen it in the donut store owner in Garden Grove beaming with pride because his daughter was the first in their family to attend college. I've seen it in Miss Jackie, the union home care worker in Lancaster, who dedicates her life to helping other human beings live their final days in dignity. I've seen it in Greg, an heroic homeless veteran just a few weeks back, after years and years of struggle with addiction, has found a new path thanks to treatment and job training. And I've seen it in the bravery of Elizabeth, an 8-year-old girl in Fresno who raised her hand at my town hall and asked not about herself, but what she can do to protect her friends in the case of a school shooting. That's what this campaign's all about. It's about advancing all Californians on their journey by making this a place of equality, making California a place of opportunity, safety, and affordability for everyone. We can make their dream real, but only if we have the courage of our convictions, the courage to dream bigger and demand more, the courage to be a state of results and a state of refuge. I've listened and I've learned from Californians of every walk of life, because I know that starting tomorrow, the hard work truly begins. But tonight, I'm just overwhelmed with gratitude, and I'm humbled. I'm humbled to accept this awesome responsibility, because I know what we can accomplish working together, transforming the politically impossible into the practically inevitable. There are so many stars, so many California stars in this room tonight, too many to name, too many to enumerate. But I want to take a moment of personal privilege and mention just a few who've shined brightest for me when I needed the most, starting with my wife, Jen, a real-life Wonder Woman. Jen, who fights every day for a world where children can live free of stereotype and social inequality while being the incredible mother of our 4 remarkable children. To all my friends and family who have been there for me, many dating back to the not-so-distant days as a struggling kid with an undiagnosed reading disorder and an especially bad haircut. I still have dyslexia, and Lord knows the jury's still out on the hair. But because of their urging and unconditional support, I grew up with the audacity to think I could make a difference and the humility to know I couldn't do it alone. And as always, politics is a team sport. And I want to thank my campaign team, the best in the business. Thank you guys. As well as the incomparable army of the grassroots supporters, organizers, all those texters who were the lifeblood of this campaign. You know who you are. Thank you for your great work. I also, because I've seen so many of them, I want to thank and salute all the state legislators who are here and every public servant elected across this state tonight. We're going to serve in different branches of government, but we share the same California name on the front of our jerseys. You know, there's a famous quote, all of you know this, that we should not go where the path may lead. Don't go there, but instead go where there's no path and leave a trail. For literally my entire life, Governor Jerry Brown has been blazing his trail as a pioneer of progress for this state. He's been a role model for me, and tonight we all owe him a profound debt of gratitude. Thank you, Governor Jerry Brown. Remarkable leadership. Robert Kennedy, I thought, always said it best. He said, few will have the greatness to bend history itself. But each of us can work to change a small portion of events, and the total of those acts will be written in the history of this generation. As Californians, we've been granted the extraordinary opportunity to write history's next chapter, and the extraordinary obligation to help every Californian write their own California story, even from the darkest of circumstances. Just last week in Merced, I met an extraordinary young man by the name of Joshua, who's writing his own story. He said to me, I can't vote for you. I was born in Mexico. I came here with my mom after my father passed away, and I watched her work 3 jobs as a cook to support me. I worked as a community service officer, he said, at Merced Police Department to pay his own way through college. And he said he's about to graduate with a UC degree. Joshua's also a dreamer who spent every waking day over the past year worrying if his dream was coming to an end. But he said, Gavin, I can't vote for you, but I want you to know I'm okay. I'm okay because I'm a Californian. That's what California means to Joshua. That's what California means to the world. Now it's our turn to spend our waking days protecting that dream for every Californian. Thank you, California. Thank you all very much for being here tonight. God bless you, and the best is yet to come. Thank you all very, very much for being here tonight.
You have just been listening to Gavin Newsom, the presumed next governor of California, and we are here with the DeLuz brothers, the Republican in blue and the Democrat in a orange. Is that?
He's wearing orange. I couldn't go with the red, so I just decided to do a little orange.
But so talk to us. I mean, you just saw. I wish we had a little box there in the screen so you could get like real-time reaction as they were listening to what he had to say. The thing that seemed to get the most reaction from you all was when he said that California was too big to fail.
Oh, it's just not a term you like to use coming out of the biggest economic decline since the Great Depression, talking about financial institutions being too big to fail and how that's a concern for a lot of folks. But other than that, I think his message was masterful and painted a really great picture of the promise of California. And it was a good touch for him to thank Jerry Brown. I thought that was really classy.
I think the one challenge he's going to have, and this is going to be played over and over again eventually, because what's going to happen is this, is that we've actually seen a good number of years of economic prosperity here in California. In California, 50% of all the tax revenue, of the income tax revenue, comes in from 1% of California's population. That's the millionaires, the millionaire taxes. That's the investment class. So if investments start to go down, if the economy starts to go like this, you're going to see California budget go like this. And it's going to be tied directly to that statement he made right there about California being too big to fail.
As a Republican, did you feel that he reached out to you? Did you feel that the
absolutely not, because he doesn't feel he has to. And that's one of the challenges with one-party control for so long, as has been the case in the state of California, is the Democratic Party doesn't feel like they need to listen to Republicans. They don't feel like they need to care what Republican legislators have to say, even when they bring up legitimate concerns.
Brother, how do you feel about that? You're his brother. You hear what he's saying? He's saying that, Democrats kind of got an ego problem going here.
He's talking loud, but he ain't saying nothing. And that's the way I hear him.
No,
because at the end of the day, his vision is actually broader than just a Democratic vision. His vision is looking out for all of California.
Okay, can we talk about props real quick? Can we talk about props?
Yeah, we can do that.
Let's look at it. I think we're going to start. We're starting with one proposition. These were I'll let you all scroll through these. Once we get to the 6, we'll probably really go in on that one. But these are the props. These were dealing with the bonds that they wanted to take out and talk about housing and that types of things. So we can go on through these. You'll see how they're doing there. We ought to have Brandon up here with us as well to go through some of these. Brandon, come on over here and talk through some of these with us as we go through these.
I think
Proposition 2 is here.
All of the propositions, particularly these first 4, I think were really important because, as you saw, the rent control initiative went down in flames.
Yeah.
But the counter argument to that was it's not a price problem. It's an availability problem. It's a supply problem.
We're going to get there. Okay, go on. Where are we now? That's Proposition 3,
Test
Brandon.
my eagle eyes here. Oh, my
Proposition 3, Brandon.
Yes. All right. So Prop 3, this one is failing. This is a bond question. This one is refreshment. This is the water project. This is the most expensive of the props that was on the ballot. So
and
it's
it's
not
not
sticker
going
shock
well.
here.
Next, Proposition 4.
Prop 4, we are looking at children's hospitals. This one's been doing well all night. It's still doing well right now.
Keep it going. We want to get to 6.
Some money over for construction there.
Keep it going.
Prop 5 is the senior property tax discount, allowing a little more portability for seniors to move around the states. That one's been doing poorly all night. It's tough to understand that one, to be perfectly honest. And then if we move on to Prop 6, this is the repeal of the gas tax. This one's been doing poorly all night.
Now, this is where I want to talk to the Lewis brothers. Okay, we can go back to the double box now. All right, I want to go to the Republican brother first. Okay, you see this. You know this was a controversial topic. We know on the news. Anytime you go out and talk to people, they said gas prices are too high. Kind of like they used to talk about rent is too damn high. People would say the same thing about the gas prices.
Too damn high.
But yet here we have.
Well, because from the very moment that the title and the summary was written by Democratic Attorney General Javier Becerra, they lied about what it was about. Because they didn't say we're reducing the tax
increase. Hit us with the lie, y'all.
He lied.
Talking
and then
you've got political combatants.
Ain't saying nothing.
And then in all of the commercials, you didn't hear anything about, hey, we're going to roll back the tax increase. What they said was, well, all these your roads are going to be dangerous, and you're going to die, and bridges are going to collapse. And
politics is about argument. And at the end of the day,
it's about lying.
The Democrats' argument was better. The Democrats' argument was better.
What was the Democratic argument?
It was a lie.
That if you don't have the revenue to fix the roads, you're not going to have roads to roll on. You're not going to have bridges. You're not going to have transportation infrastructure that's going to be suitable
so when they
for
said roads
the Golden
were going to be
State.
dangerous, and that they were going to be, when they said that roads were going to be made dangerous. Even the Sacramento Bee said that, no, that ain't the case, because most of the projects that they were already doing were already enrolling being funded, because guess what? There was already a gas tax before, Prop 49, and the legislature was stealing the money from that. What makes you think they're going to take this money? Come on, man.
We could do a lot.
Come on, man.
And this is what's happening in many households tonight as well.
But it's still not enough money to get everything done that needs to get done.
We are going to take a break. Y'all look at some of the results. We'll be back in just a few
minutes.
Not
enough. Not enough.
Congressional candidate Josh Harder speaking to the media right now. Let's listen in.
Every person in this district has access to affordable health care, even if they have diabetes or cancer or some other pre-existing condition. And that's what we're seeing in this community, and I think that's what's so exciting about this whole campaign.
Regardless if you win or not, do you felt like you helped the Democrats win back the House just by getting your name out there and competing?
Well, I don't know if I myself had much to do with what we're seeing across the entire rest of the country, but I think I've been part of something that has been, right? I mean, the silver lining of the last 2 years is people like me, like our 10,000 volunteers, who decided they'd had enough sitting on the sidelines, that politics is not a spectator sport, and they had to jump in and do everything they can to fix things. That's what we've seen in this district, and that's what clearly we've seen all around the rest of the country.
And now, energy was high when you walked into the room earlier tonight. How are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling great. I mean, I could not be more proud of the substantive, positive campaign that we ran. We did not get dragged down into the mud. We focused on the issues and what voters actually care about. And we could not have seen more of a grassroots enthusiasm and excitement. I mean, we really couldn't. And that means we can, go to sleep tonight feeling like we've left it all in the field and have no regrets. And that's something I'm really proud of.
And you've been told a few days is around what you're looking at?
That's what I'm guessing. That was what we saw in the primary in June. We'll have to see. I mean, I think regardless, we're going to fight to make sure every vote is counted.
You're telling your supporters to continue to hold out hope right now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, we're going to keep on hustling until every vote is counted.
Any other messages you want to let these voters know about?
Yeah, I think what we've done to the last 2 years is set a foundation for
Josh Harder speaking to the media. Let's take a look at the numbers just to see where things stand as we speak. Still a very close race. Incumbent Jeff Denham, the Republican, with 51% of the vote. We've not heard from Denham tonight, so let's go out to the Denham camp. Our Liz Kreutz is there live. Liz, we're hearing a lot from the Democratic side of things, but what are you hearing on your side? How is Jeff Denham tonight?
Hey, Chris, yeah, we're kind of getting dual messages from Josh Harder and Jeff Denham. Jeff Denham arrived about an hour ago here at this watch party at this converted barn here in Modesto, and he also sounded very optimistic. He said, quote, I am very encouraged by what we've seen so far, although he admitted it would be a pretty long night, and he knows that we're probably not going to have results anytime soon. His campaign manager also said they are very pleased with what they're seeing. So a lot of optimism here at this race, at this campaign party, but also I got to say that a lot of his supporters that are here have also expressed a little bit of concern. They know it's a tight race. I spoke to one of his supporters earlier tonight, Don Moyer. Listen to what he had to say. I mean, Denham's been able to pull this off for the past few elections, but you're thinking you're not really sure about tonight.
I'm worried. I'm seriously worried. Jeff is a great guy. He's been a hell of a congressman, a good guy, and these guys come in with outside money. Harder's lived in San Francisco for the last 20 years. He was registered to vote there in 2017. And he came over here and registered to vote, and the liberals have dumped, probably $6-7 million in Harder's campaign.
Now, Denham also touted his record when it comes to infrastructure and water, two issues that he ran on in this campaign. And he said that ultimately he believes that those two issues are going to help him win tonight, Chris.
We thank you, and of course our conversation continues online at abc10.com and ABC10 TV on Facebook. All right, let's try and get over to Madison now, because we actually have folks who are in. We have moms, we have teens, we have people from all walks of life who are in now reacting to some of the results that we are getting in at our Real Folks Roundtable is what we're calling them. Madison, tell us how folks are feeling as we see these results come in.
Well, we were just talking, Chris, about Newsom speaking, and obviously, now being governor of California, his message to the people who were voting for him. So we were just kind of talking about that, but also talking about how close District 10, the race for that district is right now between Harder and Denham too. There's just a lot of results that I think matter a lot to different people in the room sitting here with me tonight. But we'll talk more about Newsom, because we just heard him speak. We just heard him talk about, without saying his name, but definitely mentioning some things that you could connect to Trump. So what stood out to both of you?
So for me, the one thing that he didn't bring up, because it doesn't look good for the Democratic Party, is that right now the economy is doing really well. We're at an all-time low of unemployment. October wages just came out, and wages are up. And I think also too, what we're not talking about, what we were talking about in the early 2000s, we're not at war overseas. And I want to preface this, right? On the national politics, Donald Trump is a jerk, racist, but two things can be right at the same time. We can also be producing good results economically. And what Gavin Newsom is running on is identity politics. Well, I want to know more about how he's going to cut taxes and how he's going to put more money in my pockets, and he's not touching on that.
Gotcha. Yeah, and then as you were talking about how, Newsom obviously was making remarks against Trump without saying his name, it was pretty obvious his message was to him.
Yes, it was very obvious that he was talking about national politics, not so much. I mean, he did mention California being the 5th largest economy. Obviously, he did address California, but it seemed like a large part of his speech was directed at the president and directed at national politics. And I think, we were saying this too earlier, he seemed very, I'm not necessarily calling him presidential, but he seemed like he's priming the pump a little bit, I think. Gavin Newsom appeared very presidential, and I think that's probably why he addressed a lot of the national politics, because I believe he's making a statement looking ahead at 2020.
Yeah, and both of you were talking about that too. Just talking in terms of what we were hearing and maybe the way he was mentioning it and whatnot, but maybe grooming him for a presidential run.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he definitely worded things in a way to the point where he was addressing national issues and national concerns more in a way that somebody who is priming themselves for a presidential run would do. I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think being governor is a great stepping stone for him if he wants to become the next president of the United States. Like everyone on the panel, I kind of see him priming himself to talk about national issues, not just sticking to local issues, and kind of getting the electorate ready for that, for his run in 2020 possibly.
Now, with him being governor, do you both believe anything is changing for California, or do you think most will stay the same, given Brown was the previous governor?
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely think that things will probably follow in the same vein as Jerry Brown, just given that he was the lieutenant governor and he did work very closely with Jerry Brown for years. I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. I think that remains to be seen.
I think one of the things that he's definitely pushing for that Jerry Brown didn't necessarily go after as a policy issue is he's definitely pushing for a single-payer healthcare system in California. That seemed like one of his main shticks that he was really wanting to address, was Jerry Brown kind of cared more about the environment and the economy. Gavin Newsom seems to be focusing more on healthcare and immigration.
Yeah, he obviously mentioned that multiple times, saying that we won't put children in cages and we don't separate families, and he made it a point that that's not what he stands for, hinting at Trump. But we can also maybe correlate this too with that national politics, what you see nationally, what you may see on TV or read on Twitter or whatever it may be that you use for your social platforms. But does that influence how you vote locally?
It does for me, and the reason why is, and we were just discussing this earlier, is you have Donald Trump who's saying we're getting invaded, right? And we have all these immigrants coming in here. But then you also see on the left where we have Democrats saying that there's no immigration issue. Well, that's not true. I think we can be somewhere in the middle. I think we can manage immigration. I think there's something that we can do. You can't tell me that there's no human trafficking, drug trafficking, arms trafficking. We're polarizing this issue that we're almost focusing on what's the worst part of the subject, and we're not really discussing what's the best part. And I was referencing in 2013 when we were talking about the Gang of Eight bill that died in the Senate in 2013, is where you had Republicans and Democrats coming together trying to find a solution with immigration and the DACA and Dreamers and things like that. And I'm not really seeing that, and that's where I'm really disappointed in the Republican Party this time around.
Disappointed.
I'm disappointed that you have like Marco Rubio, who teamed up with Schumer, and who's a Democrat, and they said, look, we need to come together and come up with a comprehensive immigration bill where it shouldn't take 10 years for a law-abiding citizen who wants to be a citizen in Mexico to come here. But at the same time, we just can't have open borders and just have everybody come in. We have to have something comprehensive, and just haven't seen that from the Republican Party.
Now, nationally, does that influence what you vote for here locally where you live?
It does, and it has more so. I would say that this round it probably did more than it has in the past because, I don't even know that I would necessarily say that's a good thing, but like you were talking about right now, so many issues, especially like immigration in California, is a big issue because it affects us so much. So what goes on a national level really does affect us, but because it's such a polarizing issue, I don't know that it's necessarily a good thing, but I will say it has affected me. The national issues national politics has affected how I vote as a Californian, but I really tried to just look at the issues and look at my own values and say, okay, what lines up, and not give any, not look at Republican or Democrat and just look at the issues because it is so polarizing. And I think it's almost, I don't want to say impossible, but it's really hard at this point not to take the national politics into account. And probably in California, certainly one of the more than other states, I would say. It's hard not to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we get so much of it from every news source, you know, and whether that be on your phones or something that you turn on the TV and see, but no doubt it's influencing any sort of election that's happening here locally or in the statewide elections as well as national. All right, well, thank you all so much again. We'll check back in with them in a little bit, but we're going to send things back to you, Chris, in the studio.
All right, Madison, we thank you for that conversation. Let's take a look at some of the local measures, and see how those are looking. I think we want to start with SAC Measure U. And there you see the numbers there on your screen. Yes, this would continue the half-cent sales tax and add a half-cent more, the SAC Measure U. Up next, I think we have Davis Measure L. And this is where they wanted to take some agricultural land and use for residential purposes, mixed-use land for active adult communities. And that seems to be doing well as well, 59% of the vote, but it's still very early on. Next up, Roseville. Roseville Measure B. This would add a half-cent general sales tax, and listen to this, would generate about $16 to $19 million annually for Roseville. And so that 63% of folks there saying yes, they would like to see that $16 to $19 million come in for Roseville. What about Tracy and Measure M? Affordable housing and spaces for seniors and dealing with the high cost of living. Yes, 75% of people saying that, yeah, we got to do something about the high cost of living and that they support this measure. And so let's come back out and let's talk about propositions because I understand that there is a bit of news there. And for that, we're going to go over to Brandon with the DeLuz brothers, and then I'm going to join you guys with that conversation on propositions. Brandon.
Yeah, actually, we were just kicking around that Sacramento U, which was interesting because it's like a game of chicken that the city council played. They didn't give any option to just keep the tax the way it was. It was either raise it or it was going to go down.
Right, and the worst part about it is that, you know, not revealing all of the information, like the $50 million pension hole that exists in the city budget, which they absolutely didn't explain how they were going to fill it at all. But we've got another $62 million that's going to be here. And look, this money's all going to go to programs. And eventually you're going to be like, well, now we have $12 million. But wait, I thought it was 62. Where'd the hole go? And that is exactly what's going to happen.
But, you know, I think the other crazy thing is that they also had a get out of jail free card because they had already scheduled a special election after this. If it didn't pass, they were going to try it again.
Yeah.
So
two bites at the apple.
Yeah.
All right. We'll move on to the statewide because there's a lot to unpack with 11 statewide ballot questions. So we'll go ahead and rattle through some of these results. The first ones are all bonds. So
and they're right behind us here. They want to make it easy for us to see.
Awesome.
That's nice.
This is awesome.
Upgrades.
And that convenient.
See what happens when Chris walks over? Good things happen.
Like, this is good. Proposition 1, huh?
This was bond money to pay for more affordable housing programs. That one's passing right now. We'll move on to Prop 2. This is housing for mentally ill homeless people, and that is passing more handily than the others. That one comes out of the state's millionaire tax, the only one with a dedicated source of funds. If we move on to Prop 3, We'll get to the water projects. That one's failing. It was the most expensive. This is billions and billions
You know,
of
we
dollars.
have to talk about this one, though, y'all, because water, big issue here in California, right? I mean, it's one of the things that really people have an opinion about.
Right.
Why do you think this one didn't do as well? Just too much, huh?
One, I think it was too much. I think the price tag was really, really big. Number two, I also think you had people in particular who believe the water is an issue, recognize this water bond didn't have enough storage. And that's our biggest issue is we don't have enough storage. And people who would have thought to vote for this didn't like it for that very reason.
It carved up a big pile of money into a bunch of different categories, not just storage.
Not enough work was done to give an example of what it's going to look like. You know, so
how
there
does
was
this impact my daily life?
Right. And what is this going to look like? Is there give me a picture of a big dam, or give me a picture of water flowing through the community, something like that.
Let's keep it going. They want a big loan for future water projects. It's back to the drawing board.
Right.
All right.
Exactly.
Move on to Prop 3. This is the last of the big bond.
It's kids.
It's
for
Prop
the kids.
4. Sorry, I
it's
can count.
For the kids.
I can count.
It's for the children.
It's for the children.
Children's hospitals. That one's passed pretty handily. If we keep on rattling on Prop 5 is senior property taxes. This allows seniors to take the tax break they get on their property taxes and move around the state a little bit more. People not buying that one.
Can we just talk about this one, right?
Well, I just real quick, I just want to go on the bonds, and here's the scary part is. So the scary part is that we already have a potentially volatile economy. We have a volatile tax base. Now we're going to add more debt on top of it. Jerry Brown did a lot to try and keep us from adding debt to the state of California. I have a feeling that with these bonds, I don't see Gavin Newsom being interested in trying to save debt. If we go into an economic downturn, things like those bonds are going to be
an
albatross around our neck.
It's a chance you have to take because it's calculated risk. It's a chance you have to take because you have to develop the infrastructure if you're going to grow the economy. There's no other way.
Charge up them credit cards. Charge up them credit cards.
But
Do you all agree on anything? Can I just ask that? Y'all agree
Are you
on
saying
anything?
there's no place for bonds?
We both like neck bones and collard greens.
That is horrible.
The gas tax. This one they could do a whole show on. All right. But this was the repeal of the gas tax. It would have basically stuffed the whole thing back in the state legislature's face and then handcuffed them from ever raising the gas tax without asking the voters again. People didn't like that. I don't know if it was the package of those two things. Do you think they tried to hang too much on Prop 6?
No,
now you look at this result?
No, I honestly think that it just came down to the fact that they lied. They lied in the ballot summary.
They
lied
sold
in
their
the
argument better than the opposition.
They did not.
So at the end of the day, you still have
specifically
the money
speak to the facts that it was rolling
a
back.
repeal of the gas tax.
You know,
you should have watched our video. We talked about repealing the gas tax.
The money you need in order to build roads.
If you are that passionate about that one, I want to know what you think about daylight saving time, huh?
Ooh. Do you guys agree on this one?
Yes. We agree.
I will tell you my biggest issue. I'm a school board member, and the biggest issue that I have is kids walking to school in the morning in the dark. That was honestly the only reason I voted against
this one?
Yeah, I'm like, I've been doing this my whole life, so I'm like, I'm not messing with
I don't talk about how I voted, but I'll tell you, this one split my house. Wife and I went completely different on
check this out. We were both up at the gym at 5 a.m. because it was easier for us to get up an hour earlier.
That's true.
Check out the undervote on this one later when you get a chance, because something like a third of people skip this, so they just want to leave it up to other people.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, moving on. We'll go on to Prop 8 here and take a look at the result here. This is the dialysis question that filled your airwaves with nasty ads, and this one's going down pretty handily at this point.
And that, for me, that's a good thing. Some other folks I know, I'm not going to mention any names, voted yes, but I wasn't really clear on how this proposition would actually make dialysis treatment more accessible and better for folks.
And let us point out, because I know the precincts may be hard to see on this, but it's just 30% of precincts reporting. I know sometimes people get upset with the media, Brandon, when we say you all act as if it's done and it's just 30% of precincts reporting. But I mean, that's a pretty big.
Okay, let me show you. That says 2.4 million. That says 1.4 million.
Exactly, yeah.
There aren't a million votes to be made up there. This is one that really drives that home.
Million votes.
You look at
million votes.
Just like that. Say it with us. So, yeah, that's not flipping. Sorry, guys.
Keep it rolling. Proposition 9
doesn't exist. You don't get to break up California this year, but the rent control question.
Look at him. Did you see that?
I was thinking, let me
which state were you going to move to?
I was going to move to America. That's what I was going to move.
You were going to drop
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
Find that county line.
All right. Prop 10, we've called this one on the no side. The AP has called the race here. That one's handily. And then Prop 11, this was kind of a granular one about private ambulance workers that involves a lawsuit.
But it's a big deal. It's a big deal because if you have an ambulance that's nearby an accident, and if they're on break and they're not being paid, they don't get called. So literally in a situation where seconds count, having the ability to call an ambulance that's closest to an accident scene or an incident
even if they're eating a sandwich
even if they're eating a sandwich, makes a big difference. So that's what got me for this.
Was there an opposing side?
The Democratic Party got into this at the very end, and so did the unions trying to campaign against it, even though they completely blew the deadline to submit a no argument.
Right, because what the real issue here is for them, it's about labor law. And that's the thing is it wasn't like these guys didn't want to do this. It's California labor law wouldn't allow them to do it.
These guys, got some other things we got to get to, y'all. Come on now. Proposition 12. Proposition 12.
There we go. Yeah. All right, farm standards. This one's passing by 59%. Humane Society and a laundry list of animal rights groups are on the yes side. There were like 2 groups on the no side, including PETA, that said it didn't give enough space for the egg-laying hens.
We already passed condos for chickens. And now they're getting high-rise houses.
It's interesting.
Wait a minute. What's he say? Wait, now they're getting high-rise houses.
Now they're getting penthouses.
Now you watch what you say because I'm telling you, you better be careful what you say because I'm telling you, we spoke to some voters today who say that this was one of the issues that why they showed up to vote today.
I will tell you, the interesting thing is I worked for 8 years in the California State Legislature, and nothing attracted more people on either side and not necessarily the most sane people on either side than animal issues.
Yeah.
It's true. Right. It's just that way.
People are passionate about critters.
Babies and animals. Babies and animals. Okay, let's look at some of the House districts, huh? Let's come up with District 3 here. John Garamendi, 56%. They're calling that one. Any surprises there?
Nope. No, John Garamendi, interestingly, he's very good. He knows his base.
Yes, he does.
He knows his Democratic base and he knows his farmer base. He's very good.
That's coming from the Republican.
I also know Charlie Shaw very well. Would have made a great congressman.
He knows how to split the difference.
Here we go. Next up. What do we have here? They're thinking about it. District 4, here we are. Tom McClintock. Some folks said that this was a race that perhaps we need to, you want to rub that one in?
I'm saying some folks who said that this was going to be close really need to step away from the crack pipe. I'm sorry, they were delusional. They were straight up. I
want to be more charitable and say maybe they muted one too many people on Twitter. That's fine. But yours is more colorful.
But I just think that anyone who knows this district knows that it is. I mean, it's tailor-made for Tom McClintock. It's completely red.
And the fact that this was no blue wave, right?
No, not at all.
Not if it didn't get there.
And look at Doris. I mean, same type of thing, though, right? On the opposite side of things, right? I mean, she's just incumbent. Okay, keep going. Here we go. 92% reporting on that. We should point that out, though. Okay, and here we are again, the incumbent, 97%. You say, my man.
Ami Berra he's a great congressman, great representative of the area. His district is a tailor-made toss-up district. I mean, it's split down the middle, but he's finally sort of weathered that area where people are going to keep coming after him. And
with 96% reporting, here we are at 97% precincts reporting, 52%.
It's not called, but you've got more than a 4,000 vote difference. Do either of you see any way this is flipping?
I don't see it flipping, but I think the biggest challenge Republicans are going to have is, once again, both messaging and who the messenger is in this particular race.
And now that the Democrats have control of the House, he's going to get a chairmanship, so it's going to be real difficult to come after him again.
How about this one here, District 9?
Similar spread.
All right, 38% reporting on this one, though, so we'll have to
Jerry's
see
got
what
this.
actually comes. Jerry's got it, he says.
He's got this.
Okay, what other races do we have to look at? Let's see. District 10.
Oh, well, the big one. The big dance. When do you think we get an answer on this, guys?
It's 800 votes. It's still getting
it's narrower.
Tighter. Yeah, I think it's going to be couple days.
Nail biter.
I think it's going to be a couple days. Those last.
Keep in mind, this is 62% of precincts reporting.
Correct.
And we got 51% Jeff Denham, 49% Josh Harder, 62% of precincts reporting.
You're right. If it were a wider spread, I'd say call it. I mean, if it were 1 point more, you know, the 3% that I said it was going to be.
Yeah.
then I'd say that.
You remember that we have that on tape.
I do remember that.
But it's early. It's still early.
It is, but to your point, you're saying it's like an 800 vote spread. It was 1,000 votes earlier, so we're getting a tighter race, which is strap in, folks. This could get fun.
So with all of that said, let's talk about balance of power, huh? I mean, I know it looks like a lot of red on this map, but the bottom line is we are now Republicans gaining seats in the Senate, and the Democrats controlling the House.
We've got 26.
And they have the
we're up
219.
26 seats. We're up 26 seats, and I'm sure there's going to be a few more.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting. We haven't talked
They
about
only needed
what's going on.
23, right?
They only needed 23. It'll be interesting to see what happened in Orange County. I know we haven't covered that yet, but there are four seats, 39, 45, 48,
including
49.
ISA, right?
Yeah,
including
exactly.
Darrell Issa.
Exactly.
We'll have to see what happens with
I
that.
hate to call any counties out, but they've been a little slow on the results.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well,
what is the deal with that, huh?
There's something down in the OC.
So this really is the big picture, right? I mean, we've tried to give you some of the big races that people are talking about in our last kind of 2 minutes for us to kind of chat with you before we let you kind of digest some of all the numbers that we went through. What are just some of your big takeaways as we look at the Senate? I understand we have some things that you want to talk about with that, with the Senate. One of the main things is we are now divided still. You know what I mean? I know you all say don't.
We have divided politics. We are still a united nation. We're still one nation. We disagree. Just like we're family, we disagree. But at the end of the day, we're still family. We're still Deluzes. We are all still Americans.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really happy about that. I'm really happy that the Democrats got control of the House. That means there's going to be a lot of budget money fights. That's a good thing.
Okay. Well, let me ask. Come on now. You always try to commandeer all the time. Let me talk to your brother and see what he's thinking. Well, no, because it's important that people understand that. So, what side does anybody come away feeling happy here? I mean,
I think there's something for everyone to like and for everyone to dislike. As I said yesterday. Donald Trump is going to claim victory. He's going to claim victory no matter what happened. Now the key is going to be let's see what gets done. And I think there's two groups of people who have an opportunity to be successful, and I'm hoping one is. One group is going to be the people who choose to be the adults in the room and try and get things done. The other is going to be the folks who double down on the angst and on the divisiveness.
Final words.
Unfortunately,
10 seconds. Final words.
The question is going to be what's going to happen to the Mueller probe, and it's sad that Trump is still going to get to do all his judicial appointments.
Thanks so much for joining us, y'all, online. I mean, we went all night, didn't we?
Yes.
And we're going to do some more here on TV on ABC 10. See you tonight.
You know you want to say it.
You know you want to say it.
You know you want to say it.
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay.
Bay Area and the state water grab. We're playing offense to get the water storage that we've needed now for decades.
Rallying up the crowd there, but also taking a little bit of a jab at his opponent, Josh Harder. But we're hearing sort of similar rhetoric from his opponent tonight, Josh Harder, also sounding very optimistic. And Lena Howland is over just a few miles away here in Modesto at Josh Harder's watch party. Lena, what's it like over there?
There is still quite a bit of excitement tonight here inside of Josh Harder's watch party. Now, he is still here right now taking pictures with many of his supporters, shaking their hands and thanking them for being out here tonight. Now, because of some ballot issues in Stanislaus County in this extremely tight race, Harder told us he's not expecting to get the results for a few days. As he took the stage at his watch party tonight, he told his supporters that while we won't know what happens tonight, he will work hard to make sure every single ballot does get counted. He did say he is optimistic, and he's telling his supporters to continue to hold out hope over the next few days as we wait for results. Now, people inside of his watch party had been on edge all night right up until Harder took the stage, and the crowd was re-energized with some new hope and determination for their campaign to unseat incumbent Republican Congressman Jeff Denham. Here's what Harder had to say about how things are looking for him tonight.
Well, I think we had to see how fast the early results came in, but at the pace they're coming in, at the fact that people were waiting in line till well over an hour after the polls closed, I think it's going to take them a while. That's sort of the tradition in California. What matters is to make sure that every single person has that vote counted, has that voice heard, and that's what we're going to do.
Now, spirits are still high for Harder out here at his watch party as it does continue well into the night. We are going to continue to stay out here and track this for you, and we will let you know what happens in this extremely tight race. So for now, I'm going to toss it back to you, Liz.
Yeah, Lena, extremely tight indeed. And I also want to point out something we've mentioned before, that this is a district that back in 2016 voted for Hillary Clinton, but also voted for Jeff Denham. So even if we see high Democratic turnout tonight, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing for Denham. Of course, though, there are national forces potentially working against him this election cycle, but he has proven to be done pretty well in this district, and he's built a pretty solid relationship with constituents here. But again, it is a very tight race, and I don't think either campaign is expecting to have results anytime soon. Back to you, Chris.
Liz reporting live for us tonight from the Denham campaign as they watch the results come in. And here with Brandon Ridman now, because Brandon, you've covered several of these elections, and folks want to know, what does tonight mean for Congress? We saw that Democrats will take control of the House, and Republicans will keep control of the Senate, adding to their lead there in the Senate. What's the takeaway?
Well, first of all, in that Denham-Harder race, I can't promise you if you stay up until 2 a.m. that you're going to know exactly how that ends up. So that could be when we're rubbing the Sandman out of our eyes and trying to figure out tomorrow. But we have the big overtones, right? House is going to be controlled by Democrats. Senate's going to be controlled by Republicans. That means that President Donald Trump is going to be able to confirm people more easily because the Senate has the confirmation power. But House has investigatory power, and that is hugely important.
Which means they could make life very difficult for this president.
They absolutely could. So I've got basically three big questions right now. One is on governing. Are we in for a giant logjam heading ahead? I mean, when you have two different parties controlling the two different sides of Congress, the two houses, are we more right for a government shutdown, let's say, when push comes to shove on the budget? Are they going to be able to agree on any sort of budgetary measures moving forward? So that's number one. Number two, how did the Democrats go after President Donald Trump? They were not given a mandate to go out and try impeachment. The House has impeachment power, Senate convicts and removes.
And this is certainly not a blue wave, right? I mean, you cannot call this a blue wave. And I think some people have been saying, some of the things we were throwing around online was, are they going to legislate or investigate?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they will investigate. The question is, what does that look like going forward? And think back to the Benghazi committee. What committees might the Democrats have? Are they going to have a Kavanaugh committee? Are they going to have a Russia committee? Are they going to have a Where Are Trump's Tax Returns committee? We've already seen sources in the Democratic side in Congress talking tonight about trying to get their hands on tax returns. And then lastly, out of all that, does the nation get more or less civil moving forward in this new Washington, D.C. that we see set up tonight.
Well,
unanswered question.
I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that maybe some civility will return to the national conversation, but, you know.
2020 looms not far off.
Maybe I'm just an optimist.
Cautiously pessimistic, I think is where I'm going to go.
Thanks, Brendan. We'll be talking about some of tonight's big propositions, including that big gas tax conversation, whether or not people want to repeal that or not, later in the show. The governor's race was called early tonight. Gavin Newsom will be California's next governor, easily beating Republican John Cox. Here's what Newsom and Cox had to say tonight.
I received a very generous call from John Cox. Thank you. We congratulated each other on a hard-fought race, and now I want to congratulate each and every one of you. Because you stood for courage. Courage for a change. And now I can stand before you knowing I will have the incredible privilege of serving as your next governor.
One thing that I'm really proud of is that we took the high road in this campaign. We ran a campaign based upon issues and not personal attacks. I tell you what, I lament the loss of civility that we have had and we have seen in politics. And if I have anything to say about it, we're going to bring honor and civility back into our politics.
Although I will tell you, some folks were saying, what campaign, huh? That maybe there should have been more debates, more action that actually happened around that campaign, but it is what it is. Let's go now to the race for Senate, huh? Another race that was called early after the polls closed. Senator Feinstein will keep her seat in the Senate. She's 85 years old, and this will be her 5th term. She spoke earlier tonight about how tonight's win is an honor. Take a listen.
There's still very, very big problems out there. There are problems for women. There are problems for young women. The Me Too movement. There are problems in our economy that need to be straightened out, in our social structure that need to be straightened out, education, all these things that make a great nation like ours we can participate in with specifics. And I just want you to know that this is the greatest honor in my life, to represent my city and my state in the Senate of the United States.
Senator Dianne Feinstein taking an emotional tack there. It has indeed been a big night in California, has it not? Not only have we been following the results, but there have been some long lines at voting centers throughout the day. ABC 10's Madison Meyer has been looking at some of that voter turnout and talking to voters tonight. Madison.
Absolutely, Chris. A big night with voter turnout, record turnout across the country. I spoke with voters during our digital show tonight before Late News Tonight, and we will be showing you some of that conversation coming up. But first, just take a look at this. This was the line at Sacramento State tonight. Our photojournalist Barbara Bingley, she sped up this video as people waited for hours to vote at the voting center at the university. This is the first time they've opened up a vote center on campus, and obviously it looks like it was effective, to say the least. Sacramento State tweeted this tonight, the hashtag making it happen at Sac State. What a great turnout today. And our Kurt Rivera was in San Joaquin County today talking to voters there. He spoke with first-time voters, last-minute voters. Many took advantage of California's conditional voter registration, which took effect last year. This allows you to register and vote in an election on the same day. Your identity is later verified. San Joaquin County Registrar of Voters chief told us that they expected voter turnout so far to exceed the 2014 midterm election, which drew just about 40%.
We can tell that there's a lot of voter interest just based on the number of emails and phone calls, the number of volunteers we've had to serve at the polling places on Election Day.
So ballpark voter turnout in San Joaquin County was expected to be around 60%. There was no doubt a lot of interest in this year's election. Chris, records were broken across the country. We've been seeing that all night.
So true, Madison. We thank you for that perspective. It was something else to see those lines, was it not? As a matter of fact, they actually brought in pizza for folks as they were waiting out at Sac State. Madison, thank you. Still a lot to get to tonight. Races have still not been called. We will have Liz live with us back at the Denham-Harder race, and we're going to take a look at those propositions. The AP just made a call on that big gas tax that everybody's following. Stay with us. We'll have more after this.
I am for repealing the gas tax. I think the state just is stealing our money from the previous gas taxes, and they need to just spend that wisely.
What's motivating people is all the racism that's been going on. And I think we are a land of immigrants.
It is so expensive right now to rent in California. It's something that we really should be paying attention to.
I happen to agree with, like, nationally, a lot of agree with what the president's doing. I don't tell people how to vote, but I do tell people you need to vote whatever, you know, what you feel.